Hello, one and all. Welcome to Weekly Manga Recap. It is May the 15th of 2024. I am Nick here with Quinn, here back with regular manga after we took a week off, asterisk, for Golden Week. And we came back and there's a whole bunch of manga to talk about. And there's a whole bunch of good manga to talk about. We are spoiled for choice this week.
Yeah, this is actually going to be a very painful week when we get to chapter of the week, because there are chapters that are like fucking master classes that I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't even consider you. Like there's only so much room.
Yeah, there can be only one, as they say. It's from Highlander. Anyway.
Well, Nick, they being, of course, Christopher Lambert, who I believe was in Highlander, and Sean Connery.
Mm-hmm.
He's dead now, but
yes,
at some point he did say there can be only one. Can I name a third person who was in any of the Highlander movies?
It's actually like it's actually a really obvious choice. It's just that at the time he wasn't really known very well.
Sean Bean.
Mm.
He's been in a lot of things, and he would die probably. There could be only one. You're gonna tell me Sean Bean's gonna be the one out of all that?
Do you know who played the Kurgan, the villain in the first movie?
The Kurgan. That's a made up word. You can't just say nonsense.
Yeah.
You can't just throw future Pokemon at me.
He was played by Clancy Brown.
Oh, Mr. Krabs, yeah. Now,
and many other things, but yes.
Well, we all know him as Mr. Krabs, and whatever minor role he had in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is a bad guy. Now, Nick, Kurgan, the Pokemon, what would it be? I'm imagining some kind of Colonel Frog. Like a corn frog almost. It's like a frog that starts off as like a thing of corn. Or like a kernel. And then when it evolves, it's like a corn cob frog. And I'm gonna say like plant grass, or no, that's the same type, but like grass water.
And then it's got to get really weird for the final stage of the evolution. Whenever it's like, oh, it gets an extra type. It gets an extra type, but it's always weird because it has something else to it.
Yeah,
so you're saying that he's like a corn cob at first. So what if he becomes like a popcorn, like bombardier general kind of guy?
That could be another plant fire type.
Yeah.
Like that.
Grass fire bombardier shoots popcorn kernels that explode into fireballs and stuff.
I'm surprised this isn't a Pokemon or a League of Legends character. It feels like it would be appropriate for both of these franchises.
Right. Yeah.
I guess
you think that after having to make like 1,000 Pokemon, that this would have already been made at some point or another.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I guess they're just like, look, we could just do a cat again. No one will hold it against us. No one's going to fight us. We're just going to do another seal. It'll be different than the first seal, but it's going to be a seal, guys. We made 400 fucking hundred of these things, all right? There's a lot. We don't have time. It's another horse. This one has berries on it. It's a grass type. Here you go, you little freaks. Enjoy. Eat it up, you little nerds.
Just the Pokemon company is full of very, very bitter people. They're like, I can't believe this is how we make our millions, having to make new, stupid little creatures for these freaks.
It's supposed to be Pikmin that's making us all the money. The game about depression. God damn it. This is supposed to be about art.
Yeah, how do I come back from that?
Nick, which Pokemon would you most love to cuddle with?
Who I most love to cuddle with?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Something with a lot of... I feel like Ninetales would be pretty nice. Got all those fluffy tails and stuff.
So here's
to protect me.
Here's the thing. So I play Pokemon Sleep, okay? It's just a good way for me to like get motivated to like keep somewhat of a regular sleep schedule. Like there are active times where I'm like, ooh, it's almost like 1 a.m. If I stay up, I'm really going to fuck up my my Pokemon sleep schedule, and I won't be able to catch more Pokemon. So, like, I'm pretty good about that. Now, I don't know if it's the hormones that have finally gotten to me, or the fact that Pokemon Sleep is just, like, slowly rolling out Pokemon. But they just introduced the Vulpix and Ninetales line, and I evolved my Vulpix, and I was like, oh my god, Ninetales is one of the most fucking beautiful creatures I've ever seen in my life. Maybe
it's a pretty looking fox.
Yeah, I had no thoughts about Ninetales prior to this, and now I'm like desperately praying to find a shiny Vulpix somewhere out there in this game, just so I can get a shiny Ninetales. I want that bitch so bad.
I'm pretty sure that Ninetales is a fairly common smash when people play Pokemon Smash or Pass. So
I wouldn't have sex with it, Nick. That's disgusting. It's
I'm
revolting.
just saying, a lot of people
How
find
dare
it
you?
attractive. Yeah.
No, I find it majestic. Like, you know,
It's very pretty.
Yeah, Ash on his first day of being a trainer saw Ho-Ho fly by. I want that, a Vulpix, just like a bad video game asset moving across the sky before me, and I'm like, that's not, you don't have wings, but this is beautiful.
Anyway, Pokemon Sleep, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, that was our review of Pokemon Sleep, everybody. I hope everybody enjoys it. We'll catch you next time right here, twitch.tv/RollT. Have a good one. Oh, wait. We have podcasts to do still.
We have a whole ass podcast
Okay.
to talk about. All right. So there were a lot of series that took off last week. There was one that didn't, and
So wait,
you almost went.
Are we doing BL Metamorphosis this week?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry. Yes, we should talk about that first.
Yeah.
I did read this. You did read this, so we should talk about this. BL Metamorphosis is a series that we took a couple weeks ago for a recommendation. It is about a older woman named Ichiya, who on a whim, really, just at the bookstore, her eye is caught by a boy love manga, a yaoi manga, and she decides to buy it, and she starts reading it, and because it kind of came to her at the recommendation of this high school student, this girl who works at the bookstore, when she reads it and likes it, she ends up befriending the young girl, and they strike up a friendship that is just kind of based around this mutual love that they have for this series and, you know, boy love series in general. And that's how things start. And then the series kind of proves to just sort of be about life and friendship and different stages of growing older.
Yeah.
When we first started reading this, it was kind of built on the premise of like, oh, it's the sweet series about these two women of different ages who just bond over this love of this manga. And yes, that is true, but that's, oddly enough, that's just kind of just the backdrop for
It is
a much
just kind of how you
broader
would
series.
Yeah, you would just describe the premise this way. The BL, it explains the BL in the title, but the metamorphosis, I think, is actually the more important part because this is only a 5-volume series, and the course of it is kind of seeing how these two characters decide to like advance into another stage of their lives, and it's very, very interesting in that way because you take what is, you know, I don't know if I want to say salacious as a premise or something like that. It's boys' love, and specifically non-erotic ones at the start. But you know, you catch this easy elevator pitch kind of idea, and then watch it actually be like, actually, it's about two women of very different ages finding comfort in the companionship of one another. I guess that implies sex. That's not. They become friends. And then it just becomes about kind of them encouraging one another to be more bold in their different stages in life. You know, a teenager learning to, you know, find what she wants to do in life, find a direction, and an elderly person finding like the motivation to just like go out and do things because she doesn't really know how much longer is left. There is a startlingly brutal moment early on where Yuki, the grandma, or I guess she's just a mom. I don't know if there's a grandkid. Yes, there is. So
there is a grandkid. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you ever see it though.
Yeah, I don't think you ever see the grandkid. But early on, she realized she really likes this manga, and she's picked up a couple volumes, and then she finds out there's only going to be one volume once basically like every 15 months, and she's like, "Oh, I really hope those volumes come out faster. Like I'm gonna try to hold on until."
She's calculating like how much more she can hold on for. She's like, I bet I can like probably make it through like 6 more volumes. I'll just have to do my best to
Yeah.
hang in there.
It's very adorable, but also just like, this is a shocking reminder of our coming demise.
They end up going to an event, like a Meet the Author event, for the manga. And I think that they don't actually get to meet her while Yuki is present. But she passed on a note to like her assistant, which is like, "Can you also just tell her to please make the manga faster?"
I think she does say it directly to her. They get their manga signed, and she says just directly to the manga artist, like, "Could you draw faster, please?" Because she references it later. She's like, "Yeah, that's the old woman who told me to draw faster."
Yeah, it's very interesting because Yuki is so out of place seeming at this event. It's like, oh, it's this boy love series, and it's all these, uh, teenage and in their 20s girls coming to these events and stuff. And there's just this, very little old lady who comes along too, and she's just as passionate as any of them about it. She stands out and strikes a chord in the mangaka's mind. So later on, like, there are points where they kind of encounter her, and they're like, "Oh, it's you!
Yeah.
It's you!" Because no other old women have come to these.
Yeah, there's no other 75-year-old woman here. You have won your age bracket.
By default.
Yeah. So I think I talked about how I previously read the first volume of the series, and I wanted a reason to kind of keep going and reading more. And I really enjoyed the first volume of this series. It is full of very comfy and cozy vibes, and it is pretty like there's like dramatic beats to this story and everything like that. But I will say this is definitely like a cozy series. If you're not looking for a lot of like crazy turns or anything like that, this is going to be great. Like if you're looking for something that's going to make you kind of feel relaxed, it's going to be very cute, it's very adorable. Like this has all of those vibes all over it. And like it just kind of continues. Like there are so many moments where I was like, if this manga ends with this girl going to the old lady's house and she's like, "Why won't you answer the door?" Or something, I was like,
Right.
"You can't blank canvas me again, you fucking assholes. You can't do this." And thankfully that's not where it goes. It does still address how she's getting older, but spoilers, I guess, but Yuki doesn't die by the end of the series. Yeah.
There are definitely some parts where you get a little bit worried because, for example, Urara, the young girl, is concerned about Yuki's ability to like go to some of these big manga events because, like, hey, like this is how long it takes me to get, through public transportation and then through this gate and then down this way. And she's like, I'm walking, and I'm still not there. And she just thinks about how, the last time that she visited Yuki, she was not doing so well. So she kind of had to like crawl around a little bit in order to grab different stuff. And so she's like, I don't know if she's going to be good for this. And so she calls her up and is like, hey, let's not go to the event because she's worried about her ability to do it. And, there's no like dramatic confrontation over anything. There's, no like sense of like, oh no, that was a horrible mistake. I didn't, because we never got the chance to do that, because they do get the chance to go to another event. It's just one of those kind of things where, they have that feeling of that. And then later on, when both of them kind of realize how important this is, they each make a bit more of an effort to do this. And Urara finds ways to spend time with Yuki in a big way that are easier on her. Like she's like, hey, there's there's this like doujinshi event, and I kind of want to sign up for it. Would you like to go and man my booth together with me? And that's a lot easier on her because they get to spend time at the booth as opposed to walking around a whole lot.
And even that's exhausting. Like she just keeps mentioning, she's like, it is very cramped in there because they don't even get a full table. They have to share a table with somebody else.
She shows up looking like Master Roshi too,
That,
a nice flowery shirt and
there's
sunglasses.
one of the cutest moments in this entire manga for me is just how at some point Yuki decides to go and get a very loud dress because she's just
Yeah.
like, I feel like it. Like, let's fucking go. And she wears her old, like her loud dress to her little old lady lunch, and everyone's like, "Oh, Yuki!" It's so fucking cute. I like, I love it. And then she wears it again to see Aurora, and I was like, this is so adorable. She just got her special loud dress that she loves.
Yeah. Things work out pretty well for Yuki in this manga. She kind of just in ways that aren't like super commented on or focused on, just kind of rediscovers like a bit of zeal for life, and ends up going through a big change herself right at the end, where she like seemingly moves out of her house, or at the very least temporarily leaves it to go and visit her daughter, who lives in America. So it's a big change to go on that kind of trip. But of course, being like the younger person, Urara is the one who's going through a lot of different changes all at once, because she's going to like cram school. She's trying to figure out what she wants to do when she's out of school. There's boy troubles that she has, in the very awkward teenager way.
It's always about boy troubles, Nick. You can't get away from them.
I guess there's half the population, so it's kind of hard.
Not if I have anything to say about it. Loads
okay,
gun.
Well. Oh, Quinn, I think that there's more women in the world than boys. But I mean, there's a lot of just very quiet things that happen in this manga. It's 52 chapters, and there's quite a few of them where I would kind of be hard pressed to tell you like what actually happens in them, but it is mostly about creating that kind of sense of like, here's what the mood is in this chapter, which is often just very quietly content in a lot of cases, but oftentimes there is something where they're dealing with a little bit of regret, but it's like very restrained regret, or dealing with some trouble because of a difficult thing that's going on in their personal life, which is often very appropriately reflected in the Boy Love manga, the chapter that's coming out. Like whenever a Boy Love manga comes out, almost not Boy Love manga, whenever a chapter of the series that they read, which is like I Only Have Eyes for You or something like that,
something along those lines,
whenever they read a chapter, it's never like feel good chapter. It's always like, oh, here's the latest tasty drama that's going on.
It's always very dramatic. Lives.
And it happens to, in some way, thematically reflect something that's going on in one or both of their lives, because they're also dealing with change and making tough choices in terms of what they want to do as they read it.
Yeah, I want to kind of echo what you said a moment ago. This is a manga done by Kaori Surutani, and I think that there is like an excellent job being done to create like a pace for this manga that is like, it engages you. You're in it. You're following it, but like the chapters always end with this great use of space, oftentimes for something that is relatively minor, and sometimes for something that has essentially no relevance to the chapter or story. Like it could just be like a character coming home and being like, "Oh, hello, Margaret," or something like that, and you're just like,
yeah, essentially.
But the way it ends always kind of gave like a feeling of like a comfortable exhale. Like the chapter ends, you get this big picture to kind of look at, and then there's just kind of like a and then you flip over and you go to the next chapter. It's this weirdly kind of refreshing pace that I really, really enjoyed. Like there's a couple times that you are like worried about these characters for various different reasons. There's a moment where I was like, if this fucking girl blows off grandma, I will hunt her down. And then there's moments where you're just like in the suspense like that, but then it all, comes together in really, really interesting ways. This is not a manga I would suggest like going out for if you're like, I need those dramatic like twists and turns. Like if you're like these bitches and you're like, I need my trashy boys love manga. It's not going to be evocative of that necessarily, but there is definitely a lot of passion that is displayed just in how casual everything is. This manga cares a lot about its characters and also starts to explore the craft of creating manga yourself and like what it's like to be a new artist. Like it becomes a thing for Aurora to create her own manga and the pain she has of like, I made this, I think it's dog shit, please don't look at it, like all
Yeah.
that sort of stuff. It's just like, fuck yeah, all right, you're so young and it's so good, everyone's motivating you to kind of continue. It's good. Also, this is one of the more interesting portrayals of divorced parents I've seen because
Yeah.
the dad just kind of sucks. Like he's not an evil person. He's not a
No, he's
bad.
just kind of,
He's just kind of a dickhead. Like he just
yeah.
very blunt. Like yeah, I can see why this relationship between you two didn't exactly work out. And there's something kind of refreshing and just like
Yeah.
she's like, hey dad's like her mom's like, hey dad's coming. He's like, no, dad sucks. You're like, yeah, but it's your dad. You can't, like, I don't know what to tell you. You're gonna hang out with them.
It's very interesting that there was one very striking moment in the manga for me, which was it's the moment where Urara realizes like, oh, you know, Yuki might have trouble going through crowds and stuff if we could go to this event, and so she does a test and she's like, oh man, this is a long way for her to walk. I don't think we should do this. But before that moment, she is out with her dad, and they're in a big crowd of people, and she kind of starts to fall behind him because he just like effortlessly winds his way very quickly through people, and she's having difficulty keeping up with him. And then you know, like, oh, it's hard to keep up with him, makes her think of Yuki. But that image of him having just told her this is what you need to do, you need to go to cram school and all this stuff, and like saying you need to do bam 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 bam, and then he just woof wishes ahead of her without thought for her pace is such a great, this is what this guy is just like.
Yeah.
It's very effective visual storytelling, and there's a lot of that kind of thing where this is not a very word heavy manga. A lot of this is like you get the message of what's going on through feeling and through general
Yes.
pictures of what is happening. So there are quite a few moments where there is a nebulousness to exactly what might be going on. There's this boy that is childhood friends with Aurora, and he throughout the manga he's dating this popular girl at school who's like the mirror image of Aurora. She's pristine, she's very pretty, she's a top student where she's got all these friends. Aurora is this very withdrawn, nervous, plain looking girl who is just drawn as plain looking in a very like nice way, which is just that she just kind of looks unkempt all
Yeah,
the time.
she doesn't
Her
like
hair.
brush her hair in the morning or anything like
Mhm.
that. And she like like she has a comment very early on where she's just like she sees like girls like all put together at school and she's like who the fuck does like these must be a different species. Like I truly don't understand how you get up this early and you fucking you do this.
I'm tired all the time. Where do you
Yeah.
find the energy for this? um, and so there's, you know, a sense of tension between them because Eri clearly senses that because she's still close, Urara's still close with her boyfriend, she's like always kind of wonder if there's something going on between them. And maybe there is, maybe there isn't. It definitely seems like Aurora has some sort of attraction to him just based on like how they feel when they are around each other and stuff. But that's not really the point of the manga as a whole. It's just another one of the things of like Aurora is, you know, an adolescent girl who is going through changes in her life. So like the way that she feels about the people around
Yeah.
her is changing. And hey, maybe now that, you know, she's been through all the stuff that she's been through in the manga, maybe something will come of that because maybe she'll have the courage to confront it later. Because she's always talking, you know, talks about stuff in a way that's like, it's honestly very distressing at points because she's constantly putting herself down
Yeah.
whenever she's talking about like stuff. She's like, oh yeah, it's okay, you don't need to read it if you don't want to, you don't have to like go through the effort and stuff, it's stupid anyway. You know, it's always, you know, like she'll make a suggestion and then she'll try and underplay it because she's not confident in herself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and even towards the end when they've like made the manga, they're at the event and they're selling it. She's thinking to herself while looking at the manga that she's got, and then reflecting on her time making it, because she would make it at Yuki's house, and they would just like hang out with each other quietly while she would focus on making the manga. She thinks to herself like, this feels like completely separate from that. Like she can't draw a connection from, this is the thing that I made while I was at Yuki's place, hanging out with her and having a great time, just relaxing and being with my friend. She's like, this is, like, oh god, no one's gonna want this. She makes like $3 for the entire event, and Yuki gives her $1.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
But there's not, I would say, a lot that's really interesting that happens, but there are a couple of parts when I read this where I did get choked up a little, partially because it is a manga that is about meeting a very good friend because of your shared love of manga, and so I thought about us a little bit.
Which one was I?
You were Yuki. Like,
Okay, that's fair. You know what? As I read this manga, I was like, I kind of want to be more like Yuki. Like, I don't know if I really visioned a future where I reach that age. I don't know if I'm catching the 75 rocket or whatever. But I was like, I do kind of want to be like a dope grandma who just like helps mentor people. I was like, that does actually seem kind of awesome.
And then you would get your peanuts.
Yes! Oh my god, she gets so many peanuts in this series, guys. It's my heart. I think actually one of the things that really got me choked up, that's a beautiful sentiment, by the way. I can't match that. But I really did kind of fall in love with Urara's kind of metamorphosis, as the series calls it, as she comes into her own. I'm somebody who's finding myself coming into my own in a lot of ways, and it's just one of these like very beautiful things to watch somebody who is very shy, who has a lot of self-esteem issues, who doesn't have a lot of focus or direction in their life, suddenly like finding like these things casually coming to her. It's not even like a big moment. It's not like she climbed to a top of the mountain and she's like, this is what I'm gonna do. They just kind of naturally come to her, and she makes all these progression, all these steps without even kind of realizing it. It's just very, very beautiful, to see her reach that point. In many ways, Yuki is along on that journey for her, like with her. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, the moment when she decides to go ahead and go to the doujinshi event and make her own manga and stuff. Yeah, she just kind of like decides to do it after getting, after Yuki, says like, oh, if you like this, maybe you can try, making it at some point. But she just kind of like casually mentions it, and then when she makes the decision, it's just, you just see her like signing up for the event, and that's just kind of it.
And that part was so well done, because at first I was like, what is she signing up for? I thought she was putting in her information to like apply to a college or something like that, because it's around the same time. And then it gets to the part where it's like, pick your genre, and she writes like BL, and I'm like, oh, that's not for college. They don't have a course.
No.
And then it's like the next thing, and we're like, oh my god, she's gonna make a manga. It's so cool. It's so well done.
One of the last things that happens in the series is that there's a signing event, which Urara has to be late for, because basically she's helping her friend like see off his girlfriend because she's traveling, and so they have to break up because she's like, we can't do a long distance relationship. But it's very important. Like, he clearly doesn't like want to ask Urara to go with him to it, because it's such an awkward thing to ask of your female friend to go and see off your girlfriend when there's not that kind of relationship between said two parties. But she senses it. She goes with him, even though she knows she's supposed to go with Yuki to this event. And so she's like, I'm sorry, I gotta go do this, and I'll be right back. So Yuki goes ahead of her, goes to the signing, and she gets a little bit of extra attention because, of course, the manga is like, oh, it's you!
Yeah. It's the old lady. I knew you wrote that manga, didn't you?
And yeah, so her like assistant was one of the people who was like the only other person who bought Urara's manga, was because like they heard like, oh my god, that old woman who was at that other event, she's here at a booth and making manga, but they were both away from it, so they weren't there when they actually like bought it. So then they ask about like, oh, did you make that and everything? And she's like, oh no, it was actually my good friend who made it. And then as they're like trying to be like pushed down the line, essentially. Yuki says, "Thank you for making this manga because the two of us are friends because of it."
Yeah, I did.
And that got me so bad.
Yeah, I did. I did cry when I read that one. That's such
That
a
is something that I wish that I could like say to like Inagaki Sensei or something like that. That was so beautiful. And so, although there's not a lot of heavy emphasis on like, oh, this is what it's like to make manga, and especially not this is what it's like to make boy love manga. There's very little boy love for a series that is supposed to be about boy love in
yeah.
this. Um, but it's not so much about like, oh, this is how you make a manga, but this is what the act of creation can mean,
Yeah.
both for the person who makes it and for people who then observe it later on. And it's such a simply done but so emotionally powerful moment. And I did quite like this manga. It's not usually my cup of tea, and I don't think I'll really go back to it again. But done very well in the moments where it counts. So I'm very glad that we took this as a recommendation.
I will say I do think this is one I'm going to go back to. I think there's just a comfort to it that like every couple years or so. And again, this is relatively short, 5 volumes, so it's not like a ton of time commitment. I do think this is one I could just peek back into. I'm really like enamored with the friendship that's on display in this series. There's so many times they're just like, let's go to a big event and let's grab coffee afterwards and let's just talk about what we like. And as you said, they don't really actually show the conversations. You'll get like maybe like a couple lines of exchange, like so and so from this manga is like this and so is doing that. But there's just a vibe that you get that's like, this was like a really pleasant and beautiful like coffee slash lunch or whatever they shared together. Like this was really, really sweet. And like, I don't know, that's just something that I kind of want to like every so often get into that same vibe with. It's very, very, very like alluring in that way. It's a great friendship.
Yeah. The entire series is available through Seven Seas Entertainment. And there is also a live action movie adaptation that came out in 2022.
Yes.
Which I did see a few advertisements for while I was looking up the series. So, yeah, nice series.
Really good
we
series.
got lots of other manga to talk about, so I think we'll do that now.
Absolutely.
Oh, My Hero Academia, chapter 422. We pick up where things left off last time. Everyone came in to help out Deku when things were looking their bleakest. And Aoyama starts off the chapter by kind of like helping to thrust Deku forward, while the battlefield is kind of like erupting with various attacks and everything. Deku is briefly worried about him, but he's just like, go, run, go, get going. And he's got a star in his word bubble, so he's fine.
Yeah.
Not fine is Kurogiri, because Aizawa turns to him to like shout out an instruction of some kind and sees him just like dissolving away. It's like he's done. I'm pretty sure that guy's dead. So Deku runs forward. There are these huge tentacles and lasers and stuff bursting across the battlefield, and Aizawa issues a command everyone to just carve a path to Shigaraki, make way. And Shigaraki, all for one, starts mocking everyone by saying like, my Omni Factor Unleash is not the result of giving in to basic emotion. This augmentation is me exercising control and authority over my myriad powers. As such, do not presume you have me outnumbered. So yeah, I'm doing a billion things at once, and I have control over all of them because I'm always in control. Me, all for one. Machinations.
I only lost before because I was being a big whiny bitch, but now I'm not going to be, so now you're done for.
Shoots a big laser, which Hagakure comes in and uses her refraction invisibility powers to bend the beam and start sending it back towards All for One. And at the same time, Yayorozu uses her powers to construct an electromagnetic railgun with Kaminari as the battery, and you just get a railgun and a laser blast at the same time going into All for One. And it's like, all right, that's cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
pretty cool that there are just kind of casual railguns twice this week in manga.
Yeah. I made it. Here it is. Ojiro and Sato and Sero and other people. Like, there's so many people and there's so many motion lines. I can't see all of them. Are kind of being barriers for Deku to help keep escorting him forward, knocking debris and attacks aside. Sero wraps him up in his tape and helps launch him forward, and that passes him to Tsuyu, who also was springing forward, and Shoji is helping as well. And all this is happening. People are watching stuff from the bunkers. Tsuyu's family is watching, and they're like, "Go do it, yay!" And
who's the
Shoji,
girl motivating Shoji?
I don't know. This might be someone he protected before, or it might be someone related to him, but there's been so many NPC characters in My Hero Academia that she doesn't look distinct enough for me to know. She looks very like Uraraka in this image. Okay. So I'm not sure exactly who this is. Eijiro and Ashido and a few other people, I think that's Fat Gum in the background, help to stop a big tentacle thing from getting Deku, and Ashido and Kirishima both say, it's like, go do it, and he's like, all right, and he keeps rushing ahead, and All for One is just going, it's like, this is bullshit. What's with all this?
Yeah, this is fucking garbage. I hate this shit.
Zork Rush is bullshit. What is with all these weak people swarming after me and stuff? And he's like, why do they just refuse to lie down and die? There's little life to their weary movements, yet their eyes if nothing else. Yeah, he just remembers all the times that people, like, were kind of like watching him like Deku was, and he's like, fuck these guys. That's your weakness, Izuku Midoriya. Your weakness. You're losing. What are you talking about? Anyway, he gets a boost from Gentle as well, who gives him a little trampoline to send him forward. And then War Arms is there too, and he's like, "You can do it. Have you been doing stuff? You showed up here. Have you been doing stuff?"
That'd be great. You see him picking up litter. He's like, "Look, we're gonna have to do it at some point." So, like, I just thought I'd get started on it now. That way we're, like, kind of ahead on the curve on this. Like, come on, dude. Like, grab a tentacle. Like, get in it.
All for One starts commenting that this was something All Might lacked. A weak, feeble strength that spurs these vermin to stand back up so doggedly. And there's a brief moment where Deku stumbles and trips on his way to try and reach All for One, and he's about to fall, and a hand reaches in and grabs him, and Ida has picked himself up.
Ida, Nick!
Busted legs and all, he is there running alongside his friend, helps pick him up and keep him going. And All for One realize, like, it won't perish as long as you keep moving forward, basically. Shit. There is another moment where we just get, like, more just, like, good news coming in. All of freaking Star and Stripes pilot friends lived.
Yeah. Horikoshi must have watched Godzilla -1 and was like, that's a pretty fucking cool moment, so I think I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, right. How many more Hollywood movies can I rip off? I mean, borrow from.
All right, Deku, this is your new body armor. It's called Chappie. Like, somehow
All Might protected them. It's not really clear exactly what he did, but I mean, he had armor flying around everywhere during that fight. So Hercules probably did something. And he just says, like, "Oh yeah, I those kids wanted to win and with no losses. So yeah, okay."
Yeah. Basically,
also, I'm a hero who protects people.
Yeah, trying to make it so the fewest number of people die possible.
All sorts of people all around the globe start rooting on Deku as he keeps on running. Ida gives him a push forward, And he says as he does so, "Do you recall our first day as we left school? In this moment, I understand so clearly what Uraraka meant. Deku. It screams, do your best. I kind of like it." We see that Uraraka has just gained a little bit of consciousness up in her Medi helicopter. She's also, at least, is aware of what's going on, and she gives Deku a little bit of encouragement, even from her distant perch. And then we get the Shadow President, the silhouette president of the United States, who pounds the desk and says, "Send every hero we've got to Japan pronto."
Yeah, President by Obama Bush. It could be anybody, really.
Clint Roosevelt.
No, I'm not going further back than Clinton. I get real dicey at that point.
Washing Howard.
Washing Grover, Cleveland.
And so some advice like, "But Mr. President, if All for One wins, we will be putting our nation's security in jeopardy." And the president says, "Like I give a damn, just do it."
I love manga, because only in manga can, like, shonen manga, can we create a world where the president would be moved by, like, the actions of, like, an impassioned student who's like, we should stand up to evil. Like,
an impassioned student from a foreign country.
Yeah, like, this doesn't happen here. Like, no matter what was going on, I can't imagine Deku influencing foreign affairs.
And we get... I'm sorry, this is so cheesy in the best sense. A big montage of characters from all over the place watching Deku and encouraging Mom. We see Sukauchi, Tiger of the Wild Wild Pussycats, Can't You See Kid and Friends, Coda, Gran Torino, Eri, and then we see, to almost bring it home, we see All Might, like, holding his fist up, and he's just kind of like sees an image of Deku racing away from him, and he says, "You've been my greatest hero." But that's not the last one. It's fucking Izuku's mom.
Yeah,
Inko gets the last word in. She says, "Do your best, Izuku." And that brings us to the final 2-page spread of Deku punching All for One, as we finally get the chapter title, Izuku Midoriya Rising. Oh, this was such a good chapter. This was beautifully stupid.
This chapter is incredible. It's been like, I want to say, don't quote me on this, but I want to say it's been, like, known that sometimes Horikoshi creates scenes that he knows Yusei Run can play over the top of, and this is 100% that. Somebody, like, lined up, like, if you pace out the panels from when Aoyama last chapters, like, give me your hand, it, like, goes perfectly. So this is really, really good. This is an amazing chapter. I cried reading it, listening to Yusei Run. Like, it's very, very good. It's just like there's so much emotion, and it ending with his mom is like a brilliant touch. He has to stop. This has to be it. I can't
this won't be do not do another false finish.
I can't do another one of these. There is no other. You can't go higher than this, Horikoshi, so please let this be the crescendo of all this. The fight can still go on.
If we just have Roman Reigns beat Cody again, then
like,
the next time will be even bigger.
I think this fight can still continue, but they can't have another dramatic moment of characters, like, being like, we're going to send our... Like, no one can do anything. Like, you have to just wrap it up now. Like, start finishing things from here, because this is
Don't
great.
form the spirit bomb again.
Yes, everyone, like, in his class, basically everyone gets to do something. You, like, have the different characters assembling weapons and using their special abilities, and it's all done in a small way to help the hero move forward, which is one of, like, the coolest things, like, you can do in any kind of heroic fiction of any kind. Like, I love when all the heroes' friends, like, come together to help try to contribute something. It's just so satisfying. And I really love the touch of having Ida show up and lift him forward and reinforce the line from at the very start of this series. It's just, everything is really well done here. And I loved it. I thought this was fantastic.
Yeah. All right, let's move from strength to strength.
Yeah.
Undead Unluck.
All right, Nick,
Number
let's...
206, engage!
Yes. So last time, Language had set up the ultimatum. Her word, supernova explosion.
Supernova.
Supernova. Yeah, that's the Swedish she translated it from. So Soul is going to explode like a supernova. Basically, their side has one opportunity to figure out how to do this, but otherwise, this explosion is going to kill everybody. And Language is okay with that. She's like, we're all going to return to ashes together. There is, this is the strongest image that the science folks have created. So this is it. This is the end of the game. And Fang's not really too worried. He's like, all right, well, this...
I'll punch it.
He says that there is a secret technique he has. It doesn't stand a chance, but Ichiko is like, nah, let him cook. Because Nico is fucking, he's in a Zen form and he's like radiating the soul energy. And Fang is like, wait, did he figure out how to use ki off of me, basically? And, Nico has figured out the best possible solution. He uses like a soul link. He puts his soul directly into Ichiko and he's like, all right, I'm feeding you information. Me and my daughter put this together. I should say my daughter. Our daughter and I made this in our last loop, and we're going to expand upon that deal with the word science we used from earlier, but I'm going to need your help, Ichiko. Can you do this? And she's like, of course I can. Leave it to me. And he's like, Fang, we're going to need... You're pivotal for this weapon. They don't explain what he does, but I assume he is the power source for it or something like that.
Seems like it, yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, all right, will you assist us? And he's like, no. At least that's what I would say. But you have given me like a profound state of mind, so I shall thank you by assisting you in this. I will repay my debt to you. Language is just like, all right, what's the word? Like, what's going on? And Nico's just like, all right, let's build this thing. They got 1 minute left. And they start putting together the Ultra Super Dreadnought Union Lethal Weapon Superior Buster Soul version cannon. Where, yeah, again, I'm assuming it's supposed to be essentially like Fang using his soul energy here, maybe in concert with everybody else. But Language isn't impressed. She's like, use your imagination to reinforce the word you've already used. So you've completely abandoned the idea of overcoming this with Shiratori. You're just going to push me away outside the explosion range. But it's not going to work. This is a supernova. Like, this, the sheer scale of this will destroy everything. You can't
The sun
stop
exploding will kill your solar system.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to push it away.
Yeah, so she's like, have you forgotten how strong this world is and how weak humans are? And Nico says fire, it hits Soul, who's just backing up from the sheer force of this blast. And she's just, again, like, Language is taunting. She's like, you lack imagination. Unlike Lady Luna, we're close to Lord Soul, so this is closer to the actual power that this person contains. You can't knock him off the ground, let alone defeat him. And Nico shouts, I choose the Spanish letter A for wormhole.
Agujero de gusano.
Yeah, for wormhole. And Language is like, uh-huh. And a wormhole.
This is such a good reaction.
wormhole opens up behind Soul, leading directly to the 10 Master Rules. And you just see Soul, who's like,
And Change too is like, ah!
Yeah. And Fang just says, did the image of defeat just cross your minds? What kind of buffoon would think of anything other than victory during Mortal Kombat? And exactly as planned, the laser manages to shoot Soul, who's about to go supernova, into that sort of negative dimension zone, whatever it might be. And Soul just shouts out to everybody, don't worry, I'll handle this. But as the portal is closing, he looks out and he sees Language, who looks back to him and says, sorry, Soul, I lost. And the portal vanishes, the explosion goes off, and because Soul is one of the constructs created who just died, Language takes all of the damage. So she falls to the ground, and she reverts to an even lower form. She is now just ahead, and she holds her book with like 2 strands of hair that she uses like tendrils, essentially. And Nico is ready to finish. She's like, look, this next turn's actually going to be the last. if you try to say a word to heal yourself, I'm gonna have to kill you before you can. So do you still want to fight, basically? And she's like, of course I do. I've waited 4.6 billion years for this game. And Nico's like, fine, all right. And he summons a spear that contains a lethal poison and has it pressed right up against her forehead. And he's like, say your final word, and I'm going to end this. We don't see initially what she says because it's hidden by sound effects coming in. But Nico is taken aback by this choice. And in that moment, Fuko and her group arrive on their cloud friend, and she tries to warn them. She's like, languages, but in that moment, language is gone, completely disappeared. And before Nico or Chico could finish her, and she's like, wait, she disappeared before we could stab her. And Nico's just kind of, a little taken aback. He says, that word ended with the Japanese letter N. And I can't say I'm a fan of a UMA giving me the old nudge on the back. So, do you want to do it? Do you want to do marriage, aka Kakon? And that's the end of the arc. The neutralization of UMA language was a success for the participants of Nico, Ichiko, and Fang. The reward is 2 roundtable seats. And we look at Nico and Ichiko's hands, and they have wedding rings on them now.
Yeah. What a very hype, but also very emotionally satisfying conclusion that is. Like, it's got a little bit of everything there. Just a really satisfying, like, we're gonna make this giant fuck off cannon the same as the one that was used to slow down Soul in the previous loop. It's made together with all 3 of them powering it in some way. You get the sudden, very funny moment of the round table reacting as an exploding sun god is being thrust into their world.
Yeah.
There is the awesome moment of Fang saying, like, who would think of anything other than victory right now? Because he's insane. And then there's the emotional moment of realizing, like, oh yeah, just because Beast was a dickhead and language has been weird this whole time doesn't mean these aren't, like, still living conscious people with wants and desires. And so it is, sad when, in some way when they pass.
It's very sad too, because it's been kind of established that these master rules, even though they're evil tools used to eliminate humanity, they like each other. So Soul is legitimately sad, and language is sad that she's let down Soul. Like, that's her last thing, is like, sorry, I lost. It's so good.
And then to bring it all home by, like, hey, we are like fully, closing up Ichigo and Nico's relationship because she forfeits the game in order to get them hitched.
Yeah,
like, that's
she knows she's defeated at that point, and she's just like, you two get a room. It's so good. This is basically an excellent little arc, and not just like Undead Unluck, but like shonen manga. Like, it just really executes on so many things. It builds up side characters that really needed to, like, get extra time to establish them. It has a lot of, like, dramatic, like, turnabouts to it. I love the wormhole idea. Is just so clever. As you said, it's just a great reaction when Soul's like, it's just like, it's very funny, but it's just like one of those hype moments, like, holy shit, that's so cool. And then like the ending is just such a great, like, little writing moment of just like, oh, she's gonna lose the game because she suggested marriage. It's very, very cute. It's also, as you said, very kind of bittersweet. You're like, oh, language was actually a pretty good antagonist. And, like, this was just great. Like, we got so much more of Nico, Ichigo, and Fang, and, like, I just loved it. It was really, really well done.
Yeah. Awesome little arc. I don't think that it had a single bad chapter. It was all very, very good.
Yep.
Let's do Blue Box. Chapter 148, If We Hadn't Broken Up. Taiki and Chinatsu are still hanging out at the festival. Taiki has his double disguise now, mask and fishing hat. And so Chinatsu's kind of asking, like, are you uncomfortable? Can you actually, like, see through that and stuff? And Taiki's just kind of like, oh, it's kind of fun. It's like I'm in a costume. But Chinatsu's kind of upset about this because, it's not stated why, but she's not really like at the festival with her boyfriend when he's behaving this way.
Yeah.
And we get a shot of their hands close to each other. But then we cut away from there to Kyo's family, who are also hanging out with oh gosh, I forget her name. His childhood friend. Her family is there too. Saki is her name. Kyo's little brother is like, I need to pee, because little children don't have filters. So Saki is like, oh, I'll take you, and one of the fathers tells Kyo, oh, go with them too, and he's like, okay, yeah, let's go. And so the two of them are escorting him along. As they're walking by, Hina is there along with her friends, and so they'll spot like, oh, was that Kyo, and who's that? And Ayame is like, oh, it's his next door neighbor. Their families are close, and I guess they just kind of all came here together. And look, there's his little brother. And then Hina's like, oh, his next door. Do you think he just said that, but they're actually dating? They're like, oh, but also they're like, well, no, because she's got a boyfriend. Kyo said she's got a boyfriend, but Hina remembers the way that Kyo would talk about her before, the advice that he gave her about the girl that he had a crush on, but he gave up on her because she started dating someone else. So as they're talking about that, Ayame is just kind of like quietly taking it in and trying to keep a neutral expression. Like, that's a neutral expression, but it's neutral in the sense of I am not going to react, and she's holding her face very still.
Yeah, there is a lot going on behind these eyes, trying not to think about it.
They get her attention and kind of move on. Saki and Kyo are talking as they go by, and they're talking about Ryo, who's just kind of like, because he's less than 4 years old, so he's not really, he's still part animal. This small child, not like the eyes on this kid make me feel like he's dangerous.
Yeah.
So Saki's like, oh, you've become quite the older brother. I'm 16, so sure as you used to be so small before. We're the same age. I'm with you, Kyo. This girl's weird.
Yeah, for real, she is.
But she says you used to act like you could handle everything when really you were such a crybaby. Like when your mom came down with a fever in elementary school and you had to look after your little siblings until your dad came home. And we get a flashback to that time when Kyo is this 9-year-old kid at most, and he's like, I'm the big brother, so I've got to take care of everything, so I'm gonna clean up the house. And his little brother starts climbing on furniture because kids do stupid shit. So he's got to stop that. His little sister gets trouble with the vacuum cleaner, and he's running around trying to help them. They break glass and everything, and they break a cup that he really likes because it's got a badminton design on it. And so he's just kind of like, it's fine, you're not hurt, are you? He hurts himself picking up the pieces, and then stupid little kid is like, climb that shelf.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, I forgot just how obnoxious young children can be. We're like, no, please stop.
So Kyo manages to catch him just as he's fallen, and then he's like, are you okay? And shows, does that thing that little kids do when they're not hurt but they've had a scare, which is like, okay, now I'm gonna cry.
Yeah.
And Kyo is kind of like reaching his breaking point. He's hurt now. There's broken stuff. There's a mess. His little brother's crying and stuff, and he's like, I know, it's okay. And then Saki came over because she heard that there was trouble, and he just kind of looked at her like, I can't do all this.
This is a lot. I don't know how old he's supposed to be at this point. Like, it looks like he's, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11 or something like that.
He is in elementary school, so he can't be much older than just into double digits.
Yeah. So this is a lot of stress for him to have to do, to be like, not only am I worried about my mom, I'm responsible for watching all of my younger siblings, and I'm barely like capable of watching myself. Like it is a moment where you're like, damn, like I do know that feeling where like just the world is far too fucking stressful.
Mm-hmm. So Saki in that moment in the past, like kind of like took charge. It was like, all right, you guys pick up the toys. When we're done, we'll eat stew. And then she kind of like took his head and was like, no crying. Because remember, you're the older brother. You're the reliable older brother. And look, I'm right next door. So everything will be fine. Okay. And like this all happens like just as like Kyo's mom is waking up being like, I heard trouble and stuff. But then Kyosu's sister made the comment, you're like our big brother's older sister. So, back in the present, Ryo is being like, Saki, those eyes, man. I don't know.
You don't trust it?
That might be a space alien. Saki makes the comment as they're walking around. It's like, when we walk together like this, I wonder if people think he looks like our kid. And Kyo's like,
what a weird thing to say.
We're clearly in high school. What are you talking about? And he also says, you also shouldn't say stuff like that because, like, your boyfriend probably wouldn't like that. And Saki's like, yeah, if I had a boyfriend and if we hadn't broken up, I wouldn't be here with you.
What?
All right. So, just broke up with her boyfriend, doing some very obvious things in this conversation with Kyo. I don't know.
I don't like her, Nick.
I don't know about this.
I don't like her.
Jump back over to Taiki and Chinatsu. They are in a big packed crowd now, and Chinatsu's trying to say, it's like, hey, let's just try not to get separated here. But the crowd immediately starts pulling them apart, and she tries to reach out for him as people are getting between them. They do briefly grasp hands, but Taiki spots something, lets her hand go, and gets lost in the crowd. And she starts to call out for him, but then the Batman Club says like, "Oh, Shinatsu! Oh, it's you! Yeah, we didn't recognize you. Yeah!" And so it's a group of people like the basketball club and the badminton club and stuff. And Taiki, kind of like disappears in the crowd after be like, "I'll meet you later." And so people start saying like, "Oh yeah, you look so cute, Shinatsu. Let's take a photo." Blah blah blah. And Taiki escapes like a ninja into the crowd. Gets his hitman stealth objective fulfilled, and all he had to do was abandon his girlfriend in the crowd.
Yeah, it's not great. I think Erie Gray had a really great comment earlier, which is like about how Chinatsu like is leaving her comfort zone to make this a really important day, but Taiki at this point, because he ran into Hikari, because he ran into her, he's now just worried about not getting caught, essentially, and it's just it's sad. And then of course there's just the Kyo stuff. Poriyame is like, no, everything's fine, and we the audience are now seeing like it's not. This girl is absolutely going to try to make a move on Kyo. So,
which doesn't seem like it's for the best reasons, because she has to obviously bring up like, I broke up with my boyfriend. It's like,
yeah, this has heavy rebound vibes to it, which is very unfortunate. Yeah, just like an emotionally painful chapter of a very good series where you're like, I just want things to work well for these kids. Please let it work out well.
Can we just get to the part where they're all married and stuff?
Just flash forward. None of the characters are together, and I'm like, that makes sense.
So bizarrely enough, the only one who got married is Nishida. I was like,
yeah.
What?
He married Anya Taylor-Joy. That's so random.
Is there any indication he knew her? Oh, right.
She loves mediocre badminton players. She's always said it was her type.
If you're a big Taylor head like all the rest of us, that's what they call Taylor heads. That doesn't that you don't get confused with anyone else. No.
Who?
Not at all.
Can you name another more famous Taylor?
No, I can't.
Tyler Durden? No, that's a fictional character,
Tyler.
and his name's Tyler, so that one doesn't count. And thus I have countered and refuted all points to my claim.
the clothing outlet fans are very upset, though, that they got this phrase "tailored head" taken away from them because they were really counting on that, But
Yeah.
Anyway, Vroom Chainsaw Man. It's chapter 165, Everyday Scenery. So they're going out for sushi, Quinn. They're out.
They're following up. They are doing exactly what they said.
Denji gets distracted because there's a dead body with chainsaw sticking out of it, and he's like, "Is that a dead body?" And some of the other people are like, "Yeah, don't worry, it'll get cleaned up later." Just become regular at this point, and they're just like, "Yeah, come on, we're getting on the next train." But they bring up the problem of, the best sushi restaurant closed because one of their chefs died. So then if we go from a different chain, no, that one burned down. So Fami says, by process of elimination, we'll go to Sushi-shi. Budget sushi, but they use fresh fish. So that's good. Okay.
I also love the one person who's like, I was there once. I didn't have sushi, but their tea was good. And I'm like,
what is wrong with you, kid?
I'm like, I've known far too many people who are like this. And I'm like, you didn't need to say anything. We weren't really concerned with how their tea was. I'm glad you wanted to participate, but I'm shocked you don't feel way too intimidated in this group to speak. Knowing what you know of most of the people in here, I would really be like, I want
to contribute.
I am the bottom rung on this group.
Just want to contribute, though. I want to feel like I'm not a hanger-on.
Yeah.
Their tea's good. Denji kind of just is briefly looking at like the other two people on this train car, which seems to be a parent and child who are alive but heavily beaten up. The mother has an eye patch, and also there's just busted up buildings in the background behind them. So things have been going great while you've been out, Denji. It's fine.
Yeah.
Denji says to Asa, why are you trying to fight me again? And Asa explains, because if I fight you and win, you'll be saved. So he goes, oh, are you still brainwashed by that weird cult? It's like, no, Fami, explain. So I was like, all right, yeah, let's hear this explanation. Fami explains, your heart's...
Uh-oh. All right, we got a little Nick hiccup. Fami's explained that your heart's power is what makes you Chainsaw Man. That's the power of the contract. And the terms of your contract... Oh, Nick's back. The terms of your contract require you to live a normal life. So if you break the contract, the owner's heart, the real Chainsaw Man will emerge. And if we swap hearts, basically, if we defeat the real Chainsaw Man and put a human heart into you, you just get to be a normal human again.
Yes. So Denji pauses for a second, looks at her and says, why do you know about all that? And Fami just like, think about food. Doesn't answer. And then he turns to Asa, is like, why do you believe her about this? And I was like, I mean, she helped rescue you. And yeah, sure, she's done some bad things before, but her heart's in the right place. We're both just trying to help someone. Right, Fami? Fami's stomach growls.
No other thoughts.
So then Denji says, and this is like kind of weird because Denji makes this very deep philosophical point in Denji terms, but also there is a great profound wisdom to it, despite the fact that he says it in a very Denji way. He says, what does it mean to be normal? It means, and Asa's like, it means returning to your old life, going to school every day, having a home to return to. And she's like, Naruto will turn up. Maybe the police are keeping her safe, or someone else. And, she just doesn't know how to contact you. Everything will go back to how it was before. I'm sure of it. And Denji says, poop paper, toilet paper.
I like how he like educates himself up for a moment. He's like, poop paper? Sorry, toilet paper, as you enlightened folks call it.
He says, have you ever eaten it? When I went hungry as a little kid, that's what I would eat from the public restroom in the park. But then once I stopped going hungry, I stopped being able to eat toilet paper. Do you get what I'm saying? And Asa doesn't get it. I'm confused. And so he says, I can never go back to the way things used to be. And he just kind of like lowers his head in this like kind of resigned position.
In the background, you can see buildings on fire. The metaphors are all over the place here.
So Asa is hesitant for a second. She's clearly like shocked a little bit by this, but she's like, yes, you can. I'll give you back your life. It's okay. But she's no longer looking at him. She's just like looking down, same as he is. I'll save you no matter what. And there's a lot going on clearly between these two. Like there's definitely some sense of projection. Yeah. There's like some projection going on between Asa and Denji, but there's also a lot of complicated feelings between them as well beyond that as even. So then we need someone to guide these poor lost children. Someone, a responsible adult, Quinn, has to step in at this point, take charge of these lost kids and show them the way. So Samurai shows up and he's smoking a cigarette. Kids these days are wusses. Why not like women?
Yeah, Samurai, having just finished a men's right activist podcast, has decided he wants to weigh in this conversation.
This is all because women are independent and feel like they can work without being tied down to a man.
You all wanted your big careers, and woe and behold, the world's getting destroyed. This is your fault.
Killing Chainsaw Woman won't avenge my granddad. He'd turn over in his grave. Denji's hungry and his family member's missing, so cut him some slack, says Asa. No smoking on the train, says Asa. So he drops the cigarette on the ground. He's like, fuck you. So Samurai's got the solution. I know a place that's guaranteed to perk up any man in one shot. Forget sushi. We should shove the kid in there. A soapland brothel, that's where we'll take him. Nothing cheers up a man faster than boning a woman.
I love that Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force could show up at the end of this chapter and just be like, oh, you know what I think will go really good for you, Chainsaw Man?
You should get laid. He's a pussy right now.
Yeah, you need to get yourself some strains, you know what I'm saying there? Hey, Fry Man! Like, alright, come on, dude, let's chill out here.
Nothing lets you get over yourself like getting under a stranger, you know what I'm saying?
You're like...
Yeah, that's right. I prefer the woman to be on top sometimes.
You're in a group of exclusively women and children. No semblance of responsibility whatsoever. This is complete sham.
Just, there's so much stuff going on where it's like, oh my god, these poor lost kids have too much weight riding on them. There is no one there to help them out that is even a semblance of sanity, because their options are the Nail Devil, who's looking really attractive as an option to listen to right now.
I was gonna say, is the Nail Devil even still with them at this point? I think
they were before, but they're not. We don't see them in this chapter, so they might well have just stayed behind.
Yeah, I was like, it seems like it's just the kids from the Chainsaw Man Church, Fami, and the fucking Denji and Asa.
Yeah, and so it's all these other teenagers, most of whom who are more deluded than Asa and Denji are. Let's be real. And then Fami, who's just like, dude, just want to eat, just want to do my plan to, defeat death, which I'm sure will work out great. And then the Katana Devil, who is, like you said, is just gotten back from listening to a podcast. Which one? That one.
It could be any of them, Nick. Who knows?
So yeah, there's a lot going on, and no one's going to help them out of it to make it simpler.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I know, I feel like the tone is the next chapter is going to open at they're at some shitty strip club. Because, the thing that's really, as you mentioned, Denji has, a really great, kind of explanation of his thought process in this. And this chapter also does a really good job just showing kind of how fucked up this world has become. That there are, dead bodies on the street, and Denji's like, well, that's weird. And everyone else is like, nah, someone will get it eventually. And we just see the ramifications of all the violence that have occurred. The next chapter is going to be hard cut at a strip club, and it's just going to be sad. It's going to be so fucking sad.
Oh yeah, Oh man, it's gonna be so awkward.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Spy Family Mission 98. So last time, Henry Henderson became a teacher at the academy while Martha is still attending the school as a student. She's in her final year of the high school program and everything. So, she goes to see him while he's like in his office, and she's like, "I can't believe you're here, Henry." And he's like, You don't call a teacher by their first name. I'm your teacher now." But he does offer very briefly, like, yeah, I got to graduate half a year early because of a personnel shortage due to the war. Ooh, yay. And there's like, bad news about the war going on the radio. They're like, oh, there's someone giving this really, really xenophobic like address, like we're going to wipe out the devil spawn of the East and stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh God. So he turns it off and he says, when radio was first introduced, I believed it would help to educate and inform, but now it's just filth to stir up anger and hatred. Yeah. Sorry, dude. And then Martha's like, oh yeah, did you know is my new cloak? And he says, oh yes, you've become a scholar. So, well done, Martha. And she just kind of like has this like restrained smile. You can see like a little bit of like, you got praised by him and stuff. And she also says, I've kept your tea party tradition alive, even though I rarely go. And Henry's like, oh, well, yeah, we could have a cup after this. And after that, they got to catch up. They sat together and everything. And Martha narrates, I had so much fun. It was just like the old days, if only for the briefest of moments. And, things start to get bleaker and bleaker. They run like a bombing raid drill at the school, and while they're taking shelter in the bunker, they're talking about this, and Martha's like, hey, so you're exempt from the draft, right? And Henry's like, no, we're deferred from the draft, not exempt. And I don't even know how long that'll hold true. And he says, even my own relatives are asking if I became a teacher just to dodge the draft. They wonder in this era of kill or be killed what value there is in teaching history. They prefer I teach physics so that my efforts might result in at least one bomb being made.
Jesus.
It may be that even education is powerless now. This poor guy.
Henderson didn't have to go that fucking hard there, though.
I've just... what's that movie that came out last year that won the Oscar?
Oppenheimer?
Oppenheimer. Okay. I just forgot the name of it.
Oh, okay.
It's like, I've just seen Oppenheimer. It's crazy shit.
Yeah,
did you see that shit? Scarecrow was in it, but he was...
He just starts. He's like, and Iron Man's in it, but they are like against each other, but it's like they've changed sides for some reason. Iron Man's a bad guy. He's real mean.
What are you talking about?
You wouldn't understand, you're a girl.
You wouldn't understand. Scarecrow, he's a scientist now because they put the inception in his brain. They gave him the idea for the bomb in his dreams.
The subway goes right into City Hall. You don't understand for his plans.
Things get really, really bad because an air raid happens and just destroys the Marlov Ballet. And like the main ballerina is killed along with 16 other members of the troupe. So like her dream is just goes up in smoke. Like the thing that she wanted to do with her life, they're all dead. And there's a brief shot of like she's by herself crying. Henry comes to comfort her, and they hug while she's sobbing about it. And Martha narrates, I could no longer trust that anything would be there for me forever. And shortly afterward, Henry confronts Martha at their little tea ceremony and says, I just heard from your homeroom teacher that you volunteered for the Women's Defense Auxiliary. What are you thinking? And she says, like, what are you doing? Well, you control yourself. Look, the ballet company said it's going to disband. My dream dies with it. And so he's like, what are you talking about? If you're just going to do this, don't do this. You could die. And she says, look, they're not going to just send the Defense Auxiliary straight to the front. Actually kind of hoped that I would get to be in an officer training program, but they don't allow women. And so he's calling her an idiot for this. He says, this is senseless war. have you always been such a fool? And she says, you and your precious ideals, if I don't start fighting back, I'll lose everything. I've lost my dream, and one day I could lose you too. If I don't fight to protect what little I have left, I'm going to lose it all. And Henry says, you've got to withdraw. Do it at once. And she says, you're the fool, Henry. You just don't get it. And she walks past him and leaves him there. And Henry narrates now at this point, I was the most hard-headed of idealists. I believed the world would change as long as I heeded my principles. So I dug in and defended that. So I dug into something. I dug in to defend something that was worth nothing. Education at its heart is the act of influencing and inspiring others. But like a clown in a farce, I, the man who waxed poetic about the value of education, had failed to refute a single one of Martha's arguments. It wasn't education that was powerless. I was powerless. And we get a couple of scenes of him trying to teach while his students are barely paying attention at all. And then a shot of their little tea table, which no one's using now.
Yeah, the weeds are now overgrowing the area. It's very sad.
Time passes again, of course, and they approach the end of the year for the graduation. And within the teacher's office, someone says, "Oh, is something the matter, Mr. Henderson?" And Henry says, "My cousin's been killed in a naval battle." And this other teacher's like, "Nah, yeah, well, that could have been us." It's great guy.
Yeah.
But he also says, like, hey, you're the eldest son in your family. You should find yourself a wife because, who knows when it'll be our turn to get dumped to the front lines. And Henry says, like, yeah, my parents have been pushing marriage prospects on me. And at this moment, Martha has happened to just, like, be walking by the teacher's lounge, which apparently this door is thin as shit because she just hears this entire conversation.
Yes.
And so she hears the idea that Henry's going to marry someone else. And so she, gets
freaks out.
Shocked. Yeah. Goes and she, goes outside, starts crying, and she's like, I don't know what I should do. I don't want to graduate like this. And then she overhears someone asking someone else to go to the graduation party. And she thinks that, maybe with this uncertain time, one or both of them are going to wind up having to go to war and never see each other again. So she thinks to herself, I can't just assume that he'll always be there. And the graduation party arrives. Everyone is there. Martha is in her military uniform because she's, enlisted and everything. And she says, as she approaches Henry, and she says, may I have this dance? And so they clasp hands and posture up. And immediately Henry is stumbling around and clumsy as hell.
Yeah, he is. It's very funny because she's she's a trained ballerina, so she's going to be very good at dancing. And he's terrible. And she's like, oh, is that not being part of a proper gentleman? And he's like, oh no, I'm just not coordinated. I've tried. And she's like, how inelegant. Like she's enjoying this moment just to kind of tease him.
Yeah, and he gets all flustered, and then she just says, just like old times, isn't it, Henry? And he calms down and he says, forgive me, I've been most inelegant. I have failed to respect your feelings. I have dismissed your ideals, even if I've forced my own upon you. I know such behavior to be among the roots of war, yet I find myself guilty of it. And Martha says, you think too much. So cute.
Yeah.
And as they're dancing, Martha thinks to herself, that's one of the things about you that I've made up my mind. I will make my feelings clear to you before the dance ends. She starts to say, Henry, and air raid sirens start to go off before she can get it out.
Yeah, we can see that she's saying how much I've come to truly like.
Yeah,
like
she's gonna confess.
She's saying it. Yeah.
And we know that it didn't happen, Quinn.
It was actively painful to like get to this point where they're having this cute dance together, and she's about to say something, and then seeing the air horns, and you're like, God damn it! We know what eventually becomes of them. We know both these characters live, which is always very important, but we know that they don't stay together. So there's just a moment where you're like, maybe they lied. Like, maybe they got brainwashed at some point. They were together, and then like a fucking neuron being hit their brains or something. You're like, no, of course this'll interfere.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yep.
Well, that's a very good chapter, but a downer chapter. So let's pick ourselves up with something better, Quinn. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Eden Zero, Nick. We have 2 chapters to talk about.
Oh.
So these are actually, I'm going to sum these up very quickly because not a lot actually happens in these chapters. The first one is chapter 286, Chrono Children. It's exactly what it says. The chronophage makes little chronophages and shoots them out.
Chrono baby.
Pretty much. But they're not attacking Mother. They're attacking all of Shiki's allies. So he's like, that's not good. Ziggy saves Rebecca. And then Ziggy saves Rebecca. Shiki gets his ass stomped by future Rebecca, chronophage, whatever the fuck you want to call her. It's not interesting. And the next chapter, really nothing happens. This is chapter 287, 10 to the 72nd power joules. I don't know if that's what it is or...
It is. That's correct.
Yeah, it's just the chronophages are just breaking planets and shit. They're being real dickheads. The battle's not going well. Sashiki goes into overdrive and he's like, I'm going to fight you. I'm going to pull the chronophages back, basically. And evil chronophage lady's like, I've decided to kill everything. So she goes overdrive, which is just a sexy robot lady form. It's not visually interesting. Actually, when it happened, I was like, is it Lady Freya? Is it Joker Helix? Which sexy robot lady is this? It's still a different one. But it looks like, I don't know, she has some stupid lines. She's like, Shiki's like, we've traveled through so many worlds. We finally made it to this one. I'm not going to let you destroy it. She's like, this is not paradise. The number of Edens is 0.
Oh my god, we have a title, Quinn.
Despite the fact that the ship was called Eden Zero.
The ship was Eden Zero. Oh, never mind. That's it's a way dumber way of putting it.
Yeah, but anyway, she's going to do a big bang. She's going to collapse the universe and destroy everything. Mother's fading away. It looks like it's really bad. And Rebecca ends the chapter by going, hurry, Shiki. That's it. That's the whole chapter. Yeah. This is nothing.
Yeah, it's a lot of action, but it's not very interesting.
It's not good.
Action.
Yeah.
The main thing that held my attention was that when she said 10 to the 72nd power joules, and I was like, is that accurate? And so I looked it up, and apparently it is estimated that the Big Bang, the actual Big Bang, had an energy output of 10 to the 68th power joules.
Oh, so this is stronger.
So this is stronger by...
This bitch had to big up the Big Bang?
It's about 10,000 times bigger than what is estimated to have been the actual Big Bang. Which makes sense if you consider like that this is supposed to be a much bigger universe, but doesn't when you consider that like there is like apparently very few people in this universe given that like
Rebecca has 1 billion subscribers, Nick.
I don't even think it was that much. Just kind of like waiting for this to be over. It's one of those kind of things where it's like this is supposed to be the big final battle, so it's supposed to be all important, but because this is a twist villain, it's supposed to be like, oh my god, it's actually Rebecca stuff. Because of that, there's no connection to who this is yet.
This is just a faceless nothing right now.
So it's just action with no feeling of personal stakes or anything. Even when it is revealed that this is Rebecca, it's like, okay. But that doesn't mean anything because it's not the Rebecca we know about. We don't know anything that happened to this one anyway. So, yeah, she's upset. Okay.
Stupid nonsense.
Let's move on.
Uh-huh.
Astro Royale. Chapter 4, the Ikebukuro 2. So we get a bit of a recap about the 2 Yotsuruki siblings that are going to be involved in Hibaru's attempt to recruit people onto their side. Kuran and Ko. Kuran is the guy who, like, through sheer skill has been making his way up through the ranks. Ko is a guy that they have very little respect for. Yeah. Every time that Ko gets brought up, they are constantly talking about, like, what an asshole that guy is. What a waste of shit.
They're like, I can't wait. If we get Karan on our side, we'll get Kyo. Who needs him? Fuck him. He sucks shit. I hope he dies.
It's like, this is your adoptive brother, guys.
Yeah,
Can
I
you
was
be
like-
a little nicer?
Last chapter was like such an impassioned thing to be like, we're siblings. Doesn't that mean something to you? And it's like, oh man, if we get Karan, we get Ko. Who gives a shit? It's like, damn, dog.
There's a moment where they see that someone's being robbed, but before either of them can take action, the guy gets clotheslined because the cops are barely functioning after the meteor strike. But looks like Ikebukuro is safe because Kuran brought all the delinquents from Ikebukuro together and formed a security squad called the Sanmen Roppi, the 3 faces, 6 arms. So the town is safe thanks to them. It's a good thing that this gang of thugs is around to protect us all.
Nick, this series is all about how cool the Yakuza is, and it's good that they protect us.
You know, it's going to be interesting when we talk about a different series later that recently came out, and the crimes depicted in that and how people reacted to it.
Yes.
Anyway, so they get to Club Asura, the Ikebukuro branch of the family's hideout. So it is based on the Sanmen Roppi thing. There are, you know, like Buddhists with multiple arm and heads here. So security refuses to let them in at first because it's like, you guys are too young, clearly. We're not going to let you into the club because only adults are here. Tarasu starts talking trash, and he's like, I'll kill you because you called me a munchkin. But they get distracted because there's a fight going on inside. And so they just kind of like go upstairs and leave the door open. So Tarasu and Tiparu are like, let's go inside. They go into the club where, honestly, there's no sense of how many people are in there, really, because like the first shot we get is just of the disco ball and then close shots of the two of them. So it's kind of hard to tell what's going on. There is a silly shot of Hibaru dancing, though, and it looks silly. A fight is happening between security and some just guys there, and the Sanmen Roppi are kind of getting their asses kicked by this one guy up until Kuran shows up and clocks the guy in the face and knocks him on his ass, and then knocks out the other guy. Just punches them out, and just does normal punches and beats them all up. And it was like, woo! Yeah! That's our family's #1 street fighter, the top dog of the Sanmen Roppi, Kuran Yotsurugi. And he does a cool thing where he brushes some blood off of his chin that they got on him. And the crowd is like, woo! And then Kuran glares at them all. And, he's got the serious look in his face. And they're like, oh, sorry. He's like, don't mind me. Just keep on partying. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, he rules. He's a super cool dude. He just looks like
cool
he's a
guy.
jerk.
Yeah. So Hibaru's like, oh, Karan, you're safe. It's nice to see you. So they go off and they talk with him in a separate room. And Karan's like, look, I'm sorry that you guys came all the way out here just to hear this, but I can't join you guys. And they're like, well, why not? And one of the security guys that's with them says, like, yeah, Karan's not in the position to make those decisions anymore. Like, aren't you the leader around here? He's like, nah, not anymore. And of course, who should show up but that douchebag Ko?
Oh!
And in
Nick,
front
I
of him,
hate Ko.
in front of this guy who's just showed up, their brother who's just showed up is like, ha ha, my little security robot. They say, there he is, the leech, the chump, in front of him.
This is like some Arrested Development level fucking like family talking like, oh, hey, it's Job, the dipshit idiot jerk face. You're like, damn. Also, I hate this dude's fucking outfit. The striped shirt with like the reverse striped tie. Fuck you. I don't know who you are, but fuck you. I get why they shit all over him. Yeah.
You are a chump. They're right.
You're a real leech for wearing that shirt and tie.
The rest of the Sanmen Roppi all like bow to him because he is the new leader around here. And they're like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, that's right. I'm the leader of Ikebukuro. You better not forget it. I bet no one ever expected a meteor strike would help me overthrow my brother. The world always treated me like crap. Oh, really? Name one example other than your two loving brothers insulting you in your presence while not actually directly talking to you.
While not knowing the situation either. Like, it wasn't like they found this information like, I can't believe you betrayed our best brother. We hate you. Without knowing that information, they're like, look at what the cat dragged in, then vomited up, and then dragged closer in front of us, and it stinks.
Oh my god! I bet your parents never loved you. You know my parents. I got adopted into the family. So he says,
Dad's real last words were anybody but Ko.
You want Ko? Ko takes out a lighter and says, I was holding on to this when I made the wish to smash everything to pieces. Very broad wish, but okay.
Yeah.
But it's turned him into Dr. Octopus. He's got arms coming out his back now.
So I'll say this. I mentioned before that I was like, oh, it's a really cool gimmick that like all the characters have like a little item that they use. This one goes against it. Because I was like, oh, his item is a lighter. So he'll like ignite the lighter and that'll... No, yeah. They were just like, what's something he could hold in his hand? It's a completely separate power. Like, he better fucking next chapter like light up that lighter and punch fireballs or some shit or I'm going to be annoyed.
Yep. So Ko brags that now everyone here is just his puppets. So Hibaro gets really upset and he's like, puppets? How can you refer to your own brother by such an insulting term like that? You piece of shit. So he says like, all right, well, if I beat you in a throwdown, then that means that they'll belong to me, right? I'm not going to let you just, take over while disrespecting my family like this. And he challenges him, and Ko's like, all right, perfect. You're the first person I wanted to kill. A lot of love in this family, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not the best chapter. I think it'll get better with time. This is a cool introduction, I think, to Karan, to be like, hey, this character is going to be relevant. Let's set up the established thing. Like, okay, he looks very serious, but he's actually a very nice guy. Like, I think you could do some humor and stuff with that, and, we still don't really know what he's going to be all about. Does he even have a power? We don't know yet. Ko, it is just like a weird tonal thing to go for a chapter where it's like, we're family, we're siblings. Yeah. Like, we always handled this in brawls or whatever. To just
Rasu,
like,
don't try and kill our brothers. We'll settle things like the way we always have. Like a violent family.
By shit-talking them to their face. So yeah, there was just like a slight weird disconnect. I totally could have been completely okay if they were just like, oh yeah, like give a compliment to Ko. Be like, we want Karan because he's the muscle. He's the one who's going to really help us. But like, yeah, but Karan's like crafty. He has something. Like, yeah. Or Ko is crafty. And then
he's the planner. He's a big picture guy. He helped Karan put this place together.
Yeah. And then reveal that Ko is a shithead who usurped his own brother, and then let the aggression come out. It just seems weird to be like, oh, we're all this family, except our one brother. What a fucking dickhead.
Who still has a mullet in 2024? Yeah. Seriously.
And a mohawk? What the fuck is... Cut that off, stupid. You're an idiot.
You Joe Dirt-looking motherfucker.
Yeah. Fun chapter, though. But we're running out of time, and I want to talk about some greens, Nick.
Yeah, it's chapter 22, like you. So, it's the end of the tournament. And we do see that it's, trophy or award ceremony time. Chikara got 7th place in the boys' side, and Oga was not able to hold on to her lead, unfortunately. She fell to 2nd place, and Dewa was the one who ended up winning, the more serious competitive one in her group. According to Haku's recap of it, it came down to the final hole. They were both tied. They were both about 4 yards out, almost at the exact same spot, but Oga went first, and she missed the hole by just a small margin. And seeing her mistake, Day was able to capitalize and make the shot that she couldn't. Oga offers a handshake of congratulations, but she's offering it with her left hand because her right arm's hurt. And Dewa says, a left-handed handshake means goodbye. It's bad luck, so don't do it. And Oga, was like, meh, okay. But instead, Dewa, bends down and takes her right hand so she doesn't have to move her arm. And she says, hey, see you again. Make sure your arm's healed next time. It's like, that's really nice.
I forgot just how good this chapter is, Nick.
Yeah. So they're like, all right, so let's head home. The whole group from the shop is heading back together. They've had to wait a long time for the train, and they all get on board. But then everyone realizes that Oga's not gotten on the train with them, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll take the next one." It's like, you're gonna have to like wait an hour for the train, though. And she's like, "Yeah, it's fine. I just want to be alone for a bit. See you later." And as the doors are closing, Haku hops off the train onto the platform, and Chikara is like pressing his face against the window, like, "Oh, he got up too! What the hell?" And I love Oga's very unimpressed look that she gives it, like,
motherfucker.
But Haku brings up, like, I've got all your stuff, and I also was worried I might have your wallets. And it was kind of an impulse thing that he did too.
Yes.
So he's like, look, I'll still give you your space. I'll just go stand somewhere else, and he just kind of like awkwardly stands a little bit away, but Oga can clearly feel his presence. Like, you're just distracting me more like that. Just fucking sit down.
Yeah.
So he sits down near her, and as they sit down together for a time, Oga says, "Yeah, my elbow hurts." And he's like, yeah, you should get it checked out and everything. And Oga's like, yeah, I kind of felt something was off even before the competition. And so Haku's like, well, so you like pushed through your injury? And Oga says, going to America was special in and of itself. I'm so pathetic. And Haku pauses for a second, and he says, like, you're not pathetic. You were great. Yeah, maybe it was a bad idea to play through the pain like that, but leave it to the doctor to scold you for that. You were awe-inspiring. Dozens of times a day, you wowed me. Your shots were breathtaking. Like, and he brings up, like, oh, you got across the pond on hole 7, that birdie you got on the first hole, your recovery off the slope, you were going all the way today, and I've never lived my life like that. Golf's so fun. It's a fun hobby. But people who compete, they're like from an entire other world, and I've never really understood them. But today, I feel like I started to understand. And it got me thinking, I want to live more like you do. And Oga has scooched across the distance between them and is looking up at him with this desperate expression. And she says, golf means everything to me. But I lost. And she starts to tremble. Her hands shake. She looks down at them and she says, results are what matter. I'm so frustrated. She starts going over all the little things that she did wrong now. Why couldn't it have rolled a little further on this hole? Why couldn't I have been just a little bit closer to the hole in that final shot? I would have been able to hit second then, and then I wouldn't have made that mistake. It's all because I'm still experienced. I wanted to win. And Haku's just like, I know. And he just, all he could say is like, I know.
I love this panel. I love that she's just repeating it, and she gets more and more desperate with each one. And he has like, his response gets like less and less as he's just being present in that moment.
And
because he's also getting a little upset as well.
Yeah. We get a 2-page spread of her crying, like full, like bent over, clenching one fist, crying, and Haku awkwardly sitting next to her, trying to look away, but also tearing up himself over this. Time skips ahead a little bit. They actually let another train go by so that Oga would have more time to, deal with everything. And so when they're on the train heading home together, she's like falling asleep and is leaning against Haku's shoulder, and he's moving with the motions of the train so he doesn't disturb her.
Aww.
And while this is happening, he just thinks to himself, while he starts tearing up again, she's incredible. She's a beautiful person, and I want to be like her. I want to be the kind of person other people can look up to, someone who lives their life in a way that inspires other people.
Such a great series. Really, really great chapter. So emotional. There's like a thing that Oda says, or he's like, sometimes he like makes himself cry. So when he draws like sad scenes, the characters like feel really emotional. And there's like something it's hard to describe it because like even that first shot where she looks up and she's like, golf means everything. I'm like, this is like more raw than the emotions have been in this series. Like characters have felt very like emotionally forward, but there's something about this. It's not something where I'm like, oh, the art's bad or anything. This is something where I'm like, it's so much like uglier in a way that like raw emotion sometimes can just be. And I think it's really, really well done. That 2-page spread is great.
Oh yeah. And the fact that it's Oga who has this big breakdown, who's always been so serious and dismissive of emotions and everything the whole time. But of course it's all like, this is who she really is. This person who just cares so much about all of this. And that's why she carries herself the way that she does.
Yeah.
But this was a very unexpected but very welcome moment to have in this series.
Real good stuff. Great chapter. Let's move over to what Kyoto Necromance.
Kyokuto Necromance, Chapter 3, Foreboding. So, our protagonist is getting taken to membership registration because you're not supposed to exterminate Shiryo without being registered. I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why.
As you
they
know.
don't say that yet. So yeah, they show up and a few different people, greet him, and there's a goofy moment because he's like, like putting off like responsibilities and stuff, and then one person's like, "Oh, you want to go out for a drink?" and that gets him more anxious than anything else. It's like, it's wacky because yeah. So we get some flashes of like, people being introduced in the society and everything. A woman named Fuku Azuchi meets with them and says like, okay, we're going to record the amount of ether drawn from your Shiryo. We're going to look at your ID first and I'll add you to the roster. And they're like, wait a minute, your name is Uno? Could it be Mr. Uno's? And then the guy who asked them out drinking before is like, so he's Itsuki's kid, huh? I should make my position and statement clear. Weird. But he's like, you don't, do a lot of work, and you're a real nuisance. But as one of the council directors, I understand your worth because you're so skilled. And so he's like, oh yeah, thanks, Mr. Mizu. But look, Itsuki's kid, that's a different story. Don't you think it's wrong to make him a necromancer because of your sympathy for Itsuki? And so, yeah. So they bring up like, oh, and also you guys were partners before. You're just trying to do this so the kid involved so you can have your revenge. But then Yoji just kind of lifts up a finger and goes, shh. And then he points and a giant thing appears, a shishi thing.
He does his little fucking whatchamacallit, right? Like he does his test and they're like, oh, sometimes he could even get to the size of a beach ball, but he's so fucking powerful. It's real big.
It's big. And so it's like, oh my god, what's that? Why is it so huge? And then our protag says, like, I got the feeling my dad's death had something to do with Shiryo, even before Yoji told me about everything else. And I just want you all to know that, look, this is about me. So basically, like, I'm here of my own accord and everything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, yep. So they're like, all right, you okay? And Mizu's like, yeah, okay. I don't have any right to stop him. And so he gives over to Kaoru a business card. Anyway, then they're in the car later on. They've got a cassette tape, which belonged to Kaoru's dad, which is a mixtape. Cool.
It's 2 hours of Cotton Eye Joe.
Yep.
Dad didn't like any other songs? Nope, just this one.
Just this one. So then he's like, look, when a favor is done for you, you want to pay it back. That's natural, right? I think it works the same for revenge. Okay. And Kaoru thinks to himself something weird, but whatever. Then they go to a school, like a kindergarten of some kind, and there's like some kids who are watching it block floating because, of course, there's a Shiryo that is like haunting them and stuff. And he sees that the necromancers are coming, and he's like, it's been a while. That's basically our chapter. Look, I honestly can't tell you if this was good or bad. I just kind of clocked out every time I read this chapter.
Yeah.
And did not register anything.
Now, Nick, this is chapter 3 of Kyokuto Necromance, so we have to make our final decision if this is a series we're going to keep in the recap or not.
I'm going to say no.
I'm going to echo your choice and say no as well. The fact that we have done 3 chapters, and the first one, there was kind of an excuse. We were running short on time, and you could say the same is technically sort of true today. But, like, we have yet to have, like, a grand conversation about this series. The closest thing has just been, like, I don't know, does he talk about his grandma or something? There's just, I don't know. There's only, like, one element to us, and it's, like, the JoJo stand-esque designs for the monsters is kind of cool. But, like, outside of that, I just don't think about this series at all. I don't know.
Yep. Let's move on to the most recent series in Weekly Shonen Jump.
Yeah.
Psych House.
For those who might be wondering, New Exorcist is still in the recap. We've moved it a little bit down the road.
Further. It's it has 1 year anniversary, so we're gonna bump it up a bit.
Yeah.
Chapter 1 of Psych House. Want to move in? We are introduced to our protagonist, a young-looking boy with a bucket on his head. Now, Quinn, if there's anything in the world of manga that gets Nick angry, it is a young-looking boy with a stupid piece of headgear.
I was gonna say, Taichi from World Trigger has earned your ire eternally for the fact that he has a hat that you feel is dumb.
TK from Digimon, hate his hat.
Yeah.
Fuck that kid.
Now, is this? Are you including like baby TK or like just teenage TK?
Absolutely, baby TK.
Okay.
That hat is atrocious, and that kid should feel ashamed.
Did you forgive him when he became more of like a teenager and he got like a bucket hat?
Not really. No.
Okay. So this is a lifelong grudge. This kid has it against him. It's done on sight. Okay.
So immediately I see that, and then I see the whole thing, and I think this looks like a gag series. I'm thinking it's not going to feel too good about this. And then it's not a gag series. Bizarrely enough, we get introduced to the female protagonist of, it seems like, the series, Kotone, who is like hanging out at school. She, a bucket sneaks into the class, and then stands up, and it's the kid who has just joined her class. He's just transferred in after kind of sneaking in, and she's like, "What the hell just happened? What happened?" Kid's name is Nemuru. And so he sits down. Then afterwards, Tone is eaten with her friends, and they're like, "Oh, can you like do that trick that you do?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, sure." And she holds up her cell phone and just kind of it makes it disappear. And they're like, "Oh wow, how you do that?" And she's like, "Oh well, try calling it." So they call the phone, and it's like, "Oh, it's in my pocket. How to get in here? Oh wow, how'd you do that? It's a secret." Nemuru comes by, and he's like, "Hey, have you heard of any supernatural occurrences recently?" Zero chill.
Yeah, they're like, "No, this isn't an Exorcist series. Get out of here."
He's like, "Oh yeah, I've got this kind of job where I look into like weird incidents. Have you heard about anything?" And one of Kotone's friends says, "Well, there is this store at the intersection where there have been like some like the stuff's gone missing." But there's no shoplifters to take anything. When they looked at the footage, according to the owner, stuff just goes poof and disappears. So Nemuru makes a note of that, and he's like, "All right, I'll check it out later." After school, Kotone says goodbye to her friends, and then her stomach starts growling. And she goes into the convenience store, the same one that was mentioned before, sees Nemuru actually in one of the aisles. But she's going through the items and stuff. She's like, "I've got 7 yen," which is like 7 cents.
Yeah.
So she's like, "Damn." Nemuru starts talking to her, and she's like, "What's with the bucket?" Which I'm glad got brought up in this chapter, but should have been question 1. Yes. Why do you have a bucket on your head?
What's with this bucket thing, kid?
He says it's fashion. It's not really explained why he has a bucket in this chapter. She suddenly leaves because she's like, "Oh, I'm busy with work and stuff." He gets suspicious about this because she's left without buying anything. She has gone to visit her mom, who is comatose in the hospital. things are bad. She notes to herself that it's been half a year since she has been comatose like this. And so it turns out she also doesn't have work today after all. So she's like, all right, let's go. Her stomach starts growling again. She knows to herself, I haven't had anything to eat since that piece of candy 2 days ago. Ooh.
Oh,
So
God.
she is starving. Her stomach is growling and growling. She can't ignore it anymore. She holds out her hand. We cut over to the convenience store, and a rice ball disappears off the shelf. It appears in Kotone's hand, and she says aloud to herself, I'm sorry. Turns out Nemuru was tailing her, and he says, so that's why things have been disappearing from the shelves. And Kotone's like, ha, what are you doing here? And he's like, you can't steal, Kotone. He's like, what? I bought this rice ball. And it's like, no, you use your supernatural powers, right? What are you talking about? That's not a thing. And Emerald's like, well, I've got supernatural powers too. Moa calls them psychs. He's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? And he says, you must have a teleportation psych. And so Kotone realized, like, when you were under the bucket, you were using your powers, weren't you? Oh, yeah. You must see me. But look, it's not good to do this because the government knows about psychs and they could catch you. And also, getting caught's not the important part. You're not using that psych right. Do you want to, like, join us? And before he can answer that, she throws the rice ball at him, which is a great reaction to being accused of stealing, and she, runs away. And Ember's like, we gotta talk! And I love that she, like, uses her teleportation power while running away. She's, like, touching stuff and teleporting it into his face to, like, try and dissuade him from chasing her and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a flashback to when Kotone's mom was, still awake, and they were already doing bad. Like, Kotone wanted to drop out of school so that they would be able to cover expenses better. And she was like, no, you're smart. You should go to school. You should get a good job after graduating and stuff. And Kotone is like, I'm sorry, Mom, but I couldn't keep our promise. She sees a kitty. She pets the kitty because she's a good person. And that's how you can tell. So she's petting the kitty. Then Nemuru comes across her. So she says, sorry, kitty, and teleports the cat onto his head.
Cat's fine, by the way. The cat's just like, wow.
Yeah, just hanging out.
Yeah.
Just hanging out.
New spot.
Keeps on running away from Nemuru. Eventually, she is panting and is leaning up against a car when Nemuru keeps on coming after her. So when she tries to teleport something at him, she accidentally teleports the car, and it's going to crush him. And she's like, oh, no, get out of the way. And then we just cut to a background shot of someone just walking by. And then in the distance, you just see a giant Nemuru spring up. And he's got the car now. Like, whew! So his psych is that he can do size manipulation. So he takes off the bucket off his head and is like, gotcha! And just catches her under it. So Kotone is very upset. She's like, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have done it, but I need money. I'm in debt. My mom and I were barely getting by before, and she's in the hospital. I don't know what to do. And so now that she's, in place and can't get away, Nemuru says, like, look, the reason I'm looking into the supernatural stuff is so I can find other people with psychs. We've got a shared house for people like us. Do you want to move in with us? And he shrinks the bucket so that, she's not trapped under it.
Yeah, it's just a hat now.
Yeah, now she looks as stupid as he does.
Nick's like, I hate her now.
Yep, starting to feel rage towards this person.
Just like Japan, Nick.
So he's like, look, we don't have anyone living with us who can help right now, but maybe someday we could find somebody with a psych that could heal your mom. And what do you say? Right? And Kotone is like, I don't deserve, your help, basically. So Nemuru says, like, okay, look, let's go together, and so you can apologize. They go to the convenience store. She apologizes for stealing 2 rice balls in total from the store.
$2 rice balls.
Very cheap. So the guy's like, why'd you steal them? And so she says, because, and Nemuru's like, her mom's in the hospital and she doesn't have money. Just blurts it out because she's too embarrassed to. So the manager, the owner of the convenience store is like, all right, come on, wait here. He goes back, and then he comes back, and he's got like a whole bunch of rice balls. He's like, look, I don't mind giving a rice ball or 2 to you. You're a kid. ask for help. You've got people around you who can help. You get 1 free pass. Aw.
Yeah.
Then he asks, like, how'd you steal them? And Nimmer's like, I don't know whether he'll believe it, but I mean, you can tell him if you want to. And so she's like, I've got supernatural powers. And then she demonstrates her powers, and he's like, well, that's just a magic trick clear. So Nimmer's like, well, I can grow. Breaks the ceiling.
Yeah.
So they leave. Nimmer is like, hey, Katona, do you want to come live with us? And Katona is like, I mean, why would you want someone like me? And he's like, well, I get a reward if I bring someone with powers. But whoever I recruit has to live with us. It can't just be anyone. And look, I can tell you're a good person. You tried to carry all this weight on your shoulders, and you didn't have to, basically. I think I can help you out. So from now on, rely on me, rely on the others that are going to be there. That's what I want to do. She was very touched by this. She starts crying. Time goes by, and we cut to the home, the lab that the Katona is going to be living in now. We get a few flashes of some of the people who also live there. And then we get a shot of the house, which has a big ol' like beanstalk basically next to it that Nember uses powers to grow. So that's our first chapter. It's kind of charming. It's okay. It's not really my thing, I don't think, but it was way better than I thought it was going to be. Honestly.
I will agree with that. This was better than I thought it was going to be. I'm still not like immediately hooked. I had to kind of see, I guess, what the series is going to be in general, but I was like, this is fine. Like, I thought the emotional story that was told was good. Now, of course, we've alluded to it multiple times in this episode that it's been known that this chapter was not popular in Japan because she wasn't punished enough for shoplifting, basically. Like, that she got off because they're like, oh, I actually understand why you did it, and you apologized for it, and here's, like, some food.
It's very weird to see that kind of thing. Apparently that's the kind of reaction that has specifically been on Japanese social media, which, again, social media is like, it's...
Who cares?
Who knows, like, how representative that actually is of general opinion, but it was very odd to see that kind of sentiment specifically, and to hear multiple people say, like, yeah, it's really weird that, like, in particular, Japanese reaction to this has been negative because of the mildest case of shoplifting literally ever.
They're a
she
dollar.
Stole $2 worth of stuff because she was starving and was going to die.
It's crazy. But yeah, excuse me. I don't particularly have like strong feelings on this series or anything like that. But we'll see. We have 2 more chapters before we have to decide, so should be interesting. But for our audience, you might be like, is this when New Exorcist is? No, that's coming up next. You're like, well then this is where Elusive Samurai is. Like, no, that's gone. It's out of here. We said
it has eluded us.
Yeah, this Samurai was too elusive. We have tried. We reached that point where it's just not super interesting for us. But we did talk about how we wanted
and also this week's chapter was a big Akie chapter again. So goodbye.
From what I understand, I looked at.
He's gonna die.
He's gonna die very soon. But even then, still just not really vibing with it. So we decided instead we're gonna add Marriagetoxin to the podcast, and that's what we're gonna talk about here. Now, I think there would be a part of me that kind of wants to talk about the stuff we didn't get to talk about and catch up because there's a whole lot of story. But we're so short on time that, like, I honestly think we have to truncate this discussion. We're also starting at a weird time because this is, like, the end of an arc.
Yes. There was a whole thing involving the gun user clan that were basically breaking from their principles to hold civilians hostage. And then it turned out that there was actually a plan to overtake the gun clan from within by using guns to kill people, which is a thing that the gun clan doesn't do.
Yeah.
It's just very funny.
They specifically use like non-lethal bullets, which are like, sure, dog.
Paintball rounds, basically. So, and it turns out there was going to be this whole thing where it's like, aha, we, the gun users, the true gun users are going to take over now. And then it turned out that Garo kind of accidentally, on his way to save everyone, just beat all the gun users that were there.
It was a pretty cool moment.
So the guy who wanted to take over was like, what? How did you do this? No, you haven't beaten me. Corpus Gun Nobuo uses his own body's bullet, and he starts barrel rolling the helicopter to fire it like a bullet.
So stupid, but it's really good.
Beppu gets terrified that he's like, oh my god, he's got to knock the whole building down. Beppu is a guy who warned them all about this from within. And Mizuki, who is the current head of the gun clan, starts to take action. She makes a gun, which she can do, and she hands it off to Beppu and says, this is the most powerful gun I can build right now. I'm entrusting it to you. We have to shoot Nobuo down, and you're the only one who can do it. And Beppu gets really freaked out. I was like, I don't know. And Garo's like, yeah, I know you can do it. You're no ordinary guy. In that moment, I could tell when we met. And he's like, no, you don't understand. I've just been wrapped up in my desire to save my honey, Kinosaki. And I'm just normally just too scared to shoot people. I'm just a spineless coward. Kinosaki says, Beppu-san, please. And immediately he's like, we're married now, and blows up the helicopter.
Yeah.
And Kinosaki's like, we're not married now.
I do like it every time she's just like, we're not married.
We're not. I'm not in love with you.
Yeah.
We are not. No. Nobuo survives the helicopter explosion because the series is crazy. Escapes into an alleyway. It's like, I will have my revenge. I'll kill you with my own two hands. Garo finds him and knocks him out. And he says, you will never have to hold a gun again. He's also been worried about his friends this time, who have been watching over the gun clan chairman. But it turns out that all the people that they gave guns to join their squad, they all showed up and they beat them all off screen. So Garo's like, okay, I'm glad you're all okay. But our bug user friend says like, well, we did have a bit of help. And it's Garo's admirer from the Poison Clan. I don't really remember his name because he's kind of like the least interesting character in the manga to me, so I kind of block him out every time he shows up.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, everything's fine. But however, they bring up like, we know that. Why did you come all the way out here? And Teraraki says, I was sent to summon you. Cut away from that, back up on the building. The Gun Clan all bow in apology for everything that has happened, and they're like, okay, but you all have to go to jail because of holding us hostage and stuff. But Kinosaki steps in and is like, surprise! It was all part of the show. These are professional actors, and I was in on the trick the whole time. Oh, okay.
All the rich people are just like, this makes sense.
Yes. This makes sense to me as someone whose bow tie has a bow tie. So everyone's, just like relieved and everything like that. The model who had a connection with Garo earlier has a moment of inspiration, and we get a narration that says when she retired from modeling, she began a career producing theatrical matchmaking parties, which took the world by storm. Good for her.
There you go. Good. Yeah. Good on you. This feels very much like Magu-chan, where it would just be like a character randomly. They'd be like, we never saw them again, but they became an amazing musician.
They became a cult leader or whatever. Yeah. Mizuki asks later on why Kinosaki helped them out. Kinosaki says, hey, it's fine. You guys can start over now. No one died. Mizuki's like, I hurt you. I shot you in the arm. And Garo says, like, look, Kinosaki says, it's fine, so don't worry about it. And Mizuki is very touched and just like, thank you. And then Beppu's like, my fiance is the best. And Kino's like, stop it. We're not. Yes, an awkward chapter to jump in on. It might have been better if we had held off one more week, but we did have to cover Elusive Samurai instead, so I'm happy with my decision.
Big positive all around, yeah. We'll talk a little bit more. I'll say that this arc was fine. I wasn't a huge fan of Beppu, so this wasn't the strongest one for me, but this was still a lot of fun. And let's quickly blow through Bleach this week. I'm sorry, New Exorcist.
New Exorcist. Chapter 49, The Ritual Blade. They fall asleep holding hands. No, they don't. I couldn't sleep at all that night. And so he like falls off the bed, and Suo has to like drag him back into the bed and then drag him into the center of it. And he's like, oh no, I invade your personal space. And Suo's like, no, stop it. Also, they're saying all this in front of Koga.
This is my favorite thing. Is that we don't get any, like, we see a facial reaction from her that's just chibi nothingness, but I was like, I really wanted to see her as, like, the third-person viewpoint, just being like, what the fuck's going on? Like, what are you guys doing? Like, are you fucking? Yeah.
Are you fucking? Like, because what you're talking about is weirder than if you just were fucking. Like,
Yeah.
Anyway, Suo very vaguely says, I just got a good night's sleep. That just makes it sound like you're fucking. What are you talking about? We cut over to Niue. They have broken off from the drivers, including the guy from the level 4 spirits group who has, been traveling with them, because they're also teleporting somewhere else as to continue the transport as an extra measure of security. So they show up where a bunch of blades are driven through this massive torso of a demon. And they say a ritual blade is manufactured over many years using power of the Hyo. Touching it causes everything to decay. We can't make a scabbard that will sheathe it. So we are keeping it in place by piercing it through a modified level 4 with powerful regenerative capabilities. Very cool, honestly.
Sure.
It's a cool visual, and it's explained why this is the case.
Yeah.
Here, it's like, this is the only thing we can use to hold this in place. Awesome. Then they say, Denue, your blade's this way, and she's like, oh, wow, okay, cool. I thought I was going to have to negotiate, and there's like, we have 5 ritual blades for each individual Hyo, and for a long time, we had a 6th whose purpose eluded us. As it turns out, it was created for your sake. You need that ritual blade to release your seal, and to us, it's just a useless tool. Yeah, but bargaining power, whatever. So, we cut over to Gakuro's training, and he's been like, yeah, come get me, yeah. And 3 days have gone by while he's been training with Morioki, trying to just make a chip in the soul armor, and it hasn't been happening. Morioki goes after Gakuro, goes after him. He's like, you have to get stronger. Do it. Like, that's basically what he said.
It's such a boring thing. He's just like, what if you got better?
Gakuro grabs a dagger from him, and he's like, breaking my hollow weapon doesn't mean it's over. And then Gakuro goes, Xenoblade, and stabs him. And then we get narration for it saying, like, you need to know the name of your Shikai. I mean,
this is straight up just Bleach, right? Like, holy shit.
Knowing the name of your soul cutter's sword makes it stronger. Yes.
It's wild. Like, I understand this series has always been aping Bleach, and like parts of it I've been like, okay, but this is just straight up the system of how Shikai's and Bankai's work in Bleach. Like, it's wild you're allowed to just legally do this. This would be like if there was a new manga and a character's like, I'm gonna Kamehameha you, and you're like, well, no, dog, they did it already. Do something else.
Yeah, the name of his blade is Tokoyami no Shirogane. Cool. And then we cut away to a couple people that I do not recognize that have been catching up with each other on stuff. And then it turns out that one of them is attending to all this, the level 4 spirits. Yep.
The one with like black hair is the one who was with Niue. And I don't know if the implication is they're evil or if they're mind controlled or what. And I don't care because I don't know if this character was ever established.
All right. Akane-banashi. Whew. Okay. Chapter 109, Model. Flashback to when Maikeru was young. He always felt like, he didn't belong anywhere because he was, just kind of a drama king. He always kind of stirred things up. And I do like that he has this moment where he's told, like, you've got, your dye job is very distracting. He's like, my hair is my life. If I'm not blonde, I'm not me. It's very funny to know he got rid of it after that. But then he just kind of like randomly came across a Rakugo show that was headed by Shigema. And we cut to the present where Shigema's like waking him up from a nap. And Kiku Fukute shows up. It's the girl who's been training Guriko, and so she's brought something here. And it's time for Maikeru's Shinichi promotion test. It's the day of. Big hype for it. Someone says the demand for tickets is 19 times the average amount. Jeez. News is here, of course, for the coverage, and they bring up like, hey, like, people are kind of hoping that something crazy is going to happen, because last time there was a promotion test, a bunch of people got kicked out of the school.
Yes.
So here we go. And the Arakawa Arch 4 show up, or multiples of them show up. It's Iken, it's Isho, and it's, oh gosh, I've forgotten his name. Kaise. So they all show up, and they're wondering, like, is Maikero going to be the first one to get promoted to Shinichi out of the Arakawa school? The other students all show up, so Akane is there with Kyoji and Koguma, and he's like, oh, what's with the stiff faces? It's like you're at a funeral. And they're like, kind of really stressed out for him and worried for him. He's like, hey, look, I understand. For those of us in the Shiguma school, this test has a special meaning, but that ends today. Ta-da! And he's got a note that was sent by Guriko, who's still in training, couldn't get away from it, but he sends him well wishes and says, you better get that promotion. That's nice. And he holds it out to them, and he's like, hey, you guys all write a message too, and I'll carry them all with me today as I become a Shinichi. Shiguma is also watching as this happens. He remembers when, Maikero first said he wanted to be a Rakugoka and how he was blown away by Shiga's performance. And he's like, what is it about it that appealed to you? And Maikero just says, it's the way you get to do everything yourself. And it cuts from him kind of arrogantly saying that to, in the present, putting away the well wishes from his fellow students. And Shiguma kind of gets this wry smile on his face. They're like, yeah, doing everything on your own, huh? It's very nice. Mm-hmm. Kyoji, gives him a big fist bump, and he's like, you've got my support. Koguma's like, I'm not worried about the outcome. He's like, clearly worried about the outcome.
I think you are.
And Akane also gives him a fist bump and says, I'm going to watch how you become a Shinichi, and I'm going to take lessons from it. And so Maikero ties his hair up, and he says, guess I'm going to go demonstrate the model. Cut to Zensho's stupid face.
Yeah.
No, you won't.
Yeah, he's being a real dick.
He is convinced that Maikero is not going to pass, because he brings up the way that the judging works, which is, yes, the audience plays a part, but the success or failure is determined by the majority vote of the school leader and the Arch 4. Shiguma can't be a judge for his own pupil, so it's going to be him, it's going to be Iken, and it's going to be Taizen. And you can say, Iken will probably approve of him. But Taizen, despite giving her that impertinent girl her recommendation, he won't be impressed by flashy tricks. He's literally shaking his butt while walking.
He is the most obnoxious person possible.
And he's like, and that type of audience flattery is what Aniki Isho despises most. He'll never vote for him. So the writing's on the wall. He's gonna bomb! I think we'll have a very good time. Maikero Arakawa! And now, it's time for Maikero's promotion test.
Maikero looks extremely cool with his hair tied back. Super awesome. Good stuff. I'm not expecting... I'm expecting Maikero to do better than this guy is expecting, but I am not expecting him to pass.
I kind of get that sense, too.
Yeah.
It feels like, Isho's not going to be like, get out, but it seems like he's going to say, like, this is for someone who has mastered their craft, and you're not. Yeah. You've got more growth to do, basically.
There's going to be some wham back here, yeah.
It feels like if we do Asagao gets promoted, Maikero gets promoted, and then Akane's promotion test comes up, that feels like it makes the tempo a little too predictable. If you want to heighten the drama at least a little bit, you have Maikero not pass this.
Yeah.
It just seems like the way to go.
What if he gets shot by an assassin?
That would be crazy.
I'm trying to think, like, what can happen?
Zensho's afro parts, a sniper rifle comes out. I won't let this happen!
Always have a backup plan. Like, wow, I didn't see this one coming. I'll be honest. I didn't think you were going to shoot him.
All the other members of the Arch 4 are like, wow, what a performance! He got shot! It was crazy! Pass! Shinichi, no!
All right, Nick, let's wrap this up with One Piece, chapter 1114, The Wings of Icarus. We get another title page story where Yamato is being tasked to return the blade, so he is going to basically have to travel all throughout Wano to go and do so. So we'll, I'm sure, see the bits and pieces of that. But obviously the big news is that last week, Vegapunk dropped the news that the world was going to sink under the ocean, basically. So that's where we start. The Navy HQ is reacting. All the Marine captains and vice admirals are just like, "What? What are you talking about?" But Akinu Sakazuki is kind of quiet. It leads you to think he probably is like, "This isn't good." Cut over to Mocktown. Mocktown is, of course, laughing at him. They're like, "Oh, Vegapunk's gonna let the whole place sink. He's on his way out. He's gonna leave everybody going crazy." Cut over to Water 7. They're like, "Look, we believe him here. Our city is sinking, but he's talking the whole world. Like, this is crazy." This is also the pace of this chapter. Because this is a globally affected event, we go all around the world. So we cut over then. Impel Down.
Island.
Yep. Yeah. Bunch of different characters sort of responding to things. And then the Marines at Egghead Island are like, "This is utter nonsense." But we cut over to the Elder Stars, and they are very desperate because they know he's about to say shit he can't. He's already said too much, and they can't find a snail. They give the mission to destroy the transponder snail. In fact, destroy any life form you could hear. Everything else is secondary. Vegapunk continues, and he's like, "Look, so speaking of the near future, if the sensors I built are working correctly, that a few days after I record this message, there should be a remarkable earthquake that shakes the entire planet." And they're like, "Wait, is that the earthquake that just happened today?" And he's like, "Because of that earthquake, the sea should rise about 1 meter around the world. And that will make some islands completely uninhabitable." And we see one. We see everybody just on boats who are just like, "Wait, was this a prophecy?" And he's like, "Look, if I'm wrong, feel free to disregard the rest of this message. But if this happened, you need to heed my words very carefully." And again, we cut over to different people. We see Kuzan, who's listening in all of this at full lead. And he notes that this particular earthquake is not a natural phenomenon. Cut over. Saturn is losing his mind. He's attacking to try to get to Robin, fighting the Straw Hats, but he is just screaming about Vegapunk in this moment. As this is going on, Robin does help to protect some of her crew. But Vegapunk continues, "In my own way, I had only ever hoped for peace, but this was the root of my first sin. I dreamt of an endless source of eternal energy, and in my desire to push the world toward the future, I flew too close to the sun." And we realize, Saint Saturn, notes, he's talking about the mother flame, and that's what we see. We see Mars in this lab destroying everything except the mother flame. This is something that, even if the entire world has to find out what Vegapunk has to say, this cannot get destroyed. This is what they are here for over everything else. So he explains what's trying to happen, and he starts explaining the Void Century. He says, from 900 years ago to 800 years ago, there is a period of history that is entirely blank. It is the Void Century, because all records from this time were eliminated, and the only means to this lost piece of history is to find it in the poneglyphs that are scattered along the world. And we see that celestial dragons are now reacting to this, and they're like, "Hey, make this man stop." But I think her name is Shirlea. She's Charlos' sister. The important thing to note, not all the celestial dragons know what's up, because they're like, "Void Century? What is that?" During the scene, we also cut over to Saul, who looks like he is relaxing healthy in Elbaf, and he's laughing as this news of poneglyphs now spreads across the world. And he says, "Look, the world government made it a crime of the highest order to decipher these poneglyphs, and despite being a member of the government, I broke the law, and that's my second sin. Because of people, an excellent group of archaeologists, I inherited some of these texts, and I've continued studying it to the best of my ability, and I don't regret doing this. History tells a story." Cut over to the Straw Hats that are on the cloud, who are, trying to not die from Saint Saturn. Right. And the clouds are extending outwards, and we find out that when Edison dropped down, he got to the cloud making machine, and he basically activated it to extend it. So now the clouds go a little bit further, meaning if they push the Sunny off from here, it'll land in the water. We wrap this chapter up, and while this is happening, a bunch of other stuff is happening. I can't really do it, but While this is happening, Vegapunk continues. In other words, what I know is an incomplete history of this void century, and I'm not going to put my conjecture in and try to like tell you what happened based off my assumptions. I don't want to do that. But I do know the main character of this story was born into a kingdom with very advanced technology, impossibly advanced technology 900 years ago. And like the sun god Nika spoken in Elbaf legend, he fought with a body that stretched and contracted. His name was Joy Boy, and he was the very first man on the sea to be called a pirate.
Yep. Well, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So the implication at this point seems to be that the Council of Elders decided to wipe entire islands off the planet. Might have some other consequences, just like, devastating entire masses of land causes, other stuff to happen too. Crazy that.
Yeah.
I do like some of the reactions we get, like Doflamingo laughing about all this, because
Yeah.
like, ha, your person's fucked.
I love in particular his line. He's like, "Uh-oh, it thinks we should all move to much higher ground." Like, I get you, fuck Marijoa. I get it. All right.
Yeah, but this is definitely a big, like, there's a bunch of just shit going on in the world, and we get our first look at the Mother Flame, and it's like, okay, we can see it, but what the fuck is it?
I mean, it would make sense. He said it was an attempt to create eternal energy, basically. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice chapter.
Yeah.
It was crazy in the moment when I read it, and then I read a bunch of other chapters that felt way more insane afterwards. So.
It's crazy because this is a good chapter of One Piece. The pacing is like chaotic in a really good way, but like this chapter of One Piece isn't even in consideration for my chapter of the week, which was such a tough decision.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just gonna move to it because we're wrapping up weekly manga recap for this week. My chapter of the week, and I want to give like props to a lot of chapters, but my chapter of the week I think is going to be My Hero Academia, which is the one I think that moved me the most emotionally. As I said, I cried as I read it. I was like, this is like kind of like a pinnacle of this series. Like I feel like this moment will be diminished if we try to do like another big like hype up moment or something like that. Like, yeah. But if this is kind of that last big hurrah before we wrap up Deku versus Shigaraki / All For One, that it's just like pitch perfect.
Yeah, I'm there with you. My Hero Academia, that's it for me as well. This feels like it is a hugely important moment, and it delivers in a way that only if you have been following the series for a really long time and you appreciate all the little cameos, do you get every last ounce of it out of there. But even independent of that, it's just a cool moment where like Deku's friends help him to punch the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's satisfying in that way. The last shot where it's just very simple, just him a streak of light through the darkness to punch into Shigaraki's chest and kill him, beat All For One, get rid of him.
Yeah, finally get rid of him. I'm gonna give my character of the week I think I'm going to give it to Martha from Spy Family, who was a character that I was like, last week I was like, oh, I like that they have a cute relationship, but I feel like I know a lot more and I care a lot more about Martha now after this chapter. Yeah. So I want to give credit to her. Also, that was, I think, a really, really good chapter, and I wanted to kind of give it MVP or chapter of the week, but I was like, I'm sorry, My Hero was really, really, really good.
Yeah, Undead Unluck and Spy Family both had insanely good chapters this week. And
Greens.
Green. Speaking of which, Oga is my MVP.
Yeah.
That emotional breakdown that she has is just so gripping and powerful. So that has got to be it for me.
Yeah. The audience, by the way, picked Spy Family as their chapter of the week, and Nick, voice of the people, as always, Oga for character of the week.
All right. Well, that's going to do it then for Weekly Manga Recap, everybody. Yep. Thank you for joining us for this jam-packed episode. We'll have more soon. Weekly Manga Recap. We record the show Wednesdays starting around 7:30-ish Eastern Time. You can follow us on social media. We also have a Discord, which will be linked wherever this gets posted if you want to know exactly when the stream goes live here at twitch.tv/RoloT. We also have past episodes on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com. We've got we got YouTube if you want to watch the video version. We're also on podcast feeds like iTunes, Spotify, and all that good stuff. For the video version, we've got an opening sequence made by Milo Jack Stillitz and Winston Del Cheddar. Thank you guys for making that for us. Occasionally, we also have title cards done by Steve Man, whose artwork you can check out all across the web by searching for Steve Man Art. Ninja X3i helps us to keep track of all sorts of very helpful things and put together an entire ass Jeopardy game based off of like the history of the podcast and stuff that we have covered on it. If you've not checked that out after we recorded it last week, do so. It was a fun time, and I was robbed. So
yeah, I gotta start bringing my veto in the bank in. Now that I'm champion once more.
We didn't. Did we say it was for? I don't think we said it was for anything.
I mean, Ninja kind of implied that it was. So
it's.
Don't worry, Nick. I only use my powers for good.
Is it my turn to pick this week or not?
Yes, it is yours.
Okay. I did not have a lot of time to pick it out, so I'm just going to go with one that we have gotten a number of requests for, which is Frieren Beyond Journey's End.
Oh, God. I'm actually going to have to start understanding the memes.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
There are memes?
There are a lot of memes from what I've seen. Now, I mix it up, because there's also Delicious in Dungeon has a lot of characters that I'm seeing memes about recently, but...
Oh, well, that's just, you don't have to understand those.
Yeah, okay. Nick always... Did Delicious in Dungeon show up with, like, a stupid hat one day, and that's why you have this aggression?
I don't want to revisit it, okay? Like, I don't want to go over this again. I've explained myself. I explained myself in great detail when it came up. I've explained myself every time people question me on it, and they're just like, "Oh, you don't like it because you think that the cockatrice doesn't look like that." And I was like, "No, it's not. It's not it, Basilisk. You don't think the Basilisk looks like that. That was not the point. That was a symptom of a much bigger problem." Goodbye, everyone.
Okay.